to the 99, where we're focused on brewing a better competitive commander. I'm your host, Patrick Marlette, and today marks our very first live stream for the channel. And I do hope this is getting through to you, as this is all entirely new to me. But this particular segment is called Cold Brew, for the simple fact that I'll be constructing a list from start to finish that I've never played before. So we're all doing this from scratch, and the particular commander we're going to be working on today happens to be Belbe. Belbe Corrupted Observer. Now, this is something I pulled recently from a box of Commander Legends, and is something I'm very excited to share with you all. Before I continue, I'm just going to make sure that this is getting through to you. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself, and that's fine too. Yeah, look at that. There you go. It is. I'll cut this part out. But that's our intro for this program. Yes, Cold Brew is themed conceptually. I initially thought I would be drinking cold brew coffee with this, but that was during the summertime when I thought of this particular segment. Right now I'm drinking hot coffee, not a sponsor, so I won't share their name. Now, Belbe Corrupted Observer is a unique Golgari legendary from the recent set Commander Legends, and it was something that I initially thought of brewing, but was sort of put off by the idea of giving my opponents mana. However, while recording Commander Legends content for Channel Fireball, I happened to pull this foil etched version, so I took that as a sign that potentially Belbe might be made competitive. And I have a few ideas on her, and I've seen a bunch of lists for her. I'm trying not to taint my own perception of what she can or cannot be, but we'll dive into some ideas I have for the list. And Cold Brew in particular is just me working through a deck, my thoughts on the brewing process. So you're going to get to go through a deep dive with me on how I like to brew list, and for particular legendaries, particular effects, and particular colors. So Golgari is interesting. It doesn't have too many creature combos that I like. They're kind of hard to execute on, but I think with the additional mana from her, we might be able to get there. But more on Belbe later, and we'll talk about her extensively before we begin this shoot. However, I do want to cover this just like any other episode of the 99 by going over our monthly topic, and this is something I pass off to you, as I do with all my Patreon members and Discord members. What got you into Commander, and what was your very first deck? Monthly topics are something I introduced a little while back. It was a fun way to incorporate my Patreon members' thoughts and voices on the channel, but also just a good way to unwind and discuss topics that are relevant. But for December, ending the year 2020, I figured we would do something that was a little bit more lax, maybe something fond to reminisce on. So feel free to discuss that in the chat, and of course, at the end of this video, I'll be sharing the words and thoughts of one of our Brew crew members, and I have that set aside now. But as you all know, this show is sponsored by you. So if you are a Patreon member, thank you so much. If you want to help support the channel, that is the best way to do so. There are a bunch of benefits incorporated with that, in particular pickup games, and with the coming of Cold Brew and this particular list, I would love to test this list with our Patreon members after the fact. And this is what I do when I brew list regularly. I'll maybe brew 4 to 5 legendaries and one checks out. The one that does check out, I like to test drive with, of course, the Brew crew, I mean the gang I regularly play with, and our Patreon members. So you get a first look at what we'll be playing on the show potentially. We'll see if Belbe gets there. I'm not sure she can cross the line, but I really hope so. But on that note, let's jump into discussing Belbe. And I'm going to go to the page where she's featured. So moving forward, so you all know, 2 things. Cold Brew should last about 2 hours, so 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If this time works for you or doesn't work for you, let me know in the chat below. I'll be eyeing it on my cell phone. Unfortunately, I don't have a secondary monitor, so these might be a little delayed from when I'm asking you. But also, if you're on the Discord, that's the most direct line to talk to me or the crew. And of course, if you're on the Patreon, just message me. Let me know what times work best for you. I'd like for these to air when they're most, if people are readily available. I think there's a football game going on. I'm not a sports person. But yeah, midday on a Sunday felt right for me. At least this is when we regularly air episodes. Also note that I'm on Tapped Out. Moving forward, a couple of you are asking me, am I migrating back to Tapped Out? Yes. I find the playtest mechanic here to be the best. So that's what we're going to be using from here on out. for deck lists that at least I construct and feature on the channel. I'll of course copy and paste the same list to Moxfield and Architect if you use those and you just want to review them, or copy and paste them and make your own list out of them, so it's easier for you. But for the video today and moving forward, all the lists I feature, all the lists I update will be updated on Tapped Out. So if you've been asking me questions on Moxfield, I'm probably not getting to them. Now, to go over Belbe, Corrupted Observer, I'm gonna read my foil etch version. So she's Golgari, obviously. 2 CMC, black, green, legendary creature, zombie, elf. 2 actually relevant tribes, both zombie and elf. Zombie in particular, I'm thinking might be beneficial for this list, and we can talk about some strategies there. 2/2 body. At the beginning of each player's post-combat main phase, that player adds 2 colorless for each of your opponents who lost life this turn. So something to note, this is only ever going to happen post-combat main phase, so if you had some sort of strategy that relied on dropping some fatty and getting in there, well, you're going to have to wait a turn. So your Concordant Crossroads just looks like a joke. But also do note that this says for each opponent, for each of your opponents. So that being you. So if someone swings at you, well, they're not going to get a Soul Ring worth of mana in that exchange, right? So there's an interesting dynamic here. Let's just go over the pros and cons of Belbe first. She's very easy to drop. She's very easy to cast. She also puts you in Golgari. So you have excellent tutors, and you also have excellent removal, right? And we can get over, we'll go over the removal package near the end of this video. However, Belbe's fault is that you're giving people mana. So the initial thought here would be to cast something like Peer into the Abyss, or cast Ad Naus, because you're making all this generic that's going to feed into the generic cost of those cards. However, in the same vein, you're giving your opponents who are playing those turbo list the benefit of getting mana off of you, right? So we do need to run an amount of stacks to hopefully put those lists down. So in my mind, already looking at this, I'm thinking things like Root Maze are going to be great, things like Torpor Orb to stop those docksides, some tax effects potentially like Damping Sphere, that's going to help stop those storm lists, stop those turbo lists that are going to be actively playing faster than you. And then for any mid-range list, we can discuss the kind of stacks package or interaction we'll want for them. But there is an upside to this as well. The fact that they don't get a Soul Ring's worth of mana from attacking you means that they're less likely to attack you if it means that they can further their game plan by swinging at other people. So this should leave us with a handsome chunk of life to go ahead and, play out our own Ad Naus or Peer. And mind you, just because we're in Golgari and just because those are really important cards for black doesn't mean we're going to be utilizing them. I'm going to go ahead and stop here and just look at these. All clear. Okay. This is so far off to the side. If someone drops a super chat or something, I'll try to look over this. Fortunately, again, I don't have a secondary monitor. That would be super beneficial. But also let me know if the audio sounds good to you. Again, this is all very new to me. My microphone's situated just above my laptop, which is fuming. It's just venting extremely loudly. So if you hear that, pardon that. Also, I have the AC blasting because they don't know how to manage the heat in this building. So I'm really glad I left that installed. At any rate, Belbe, fantastic ramp. What do we do with that ramp? I'm thinking creature combos are probably a reliable way to go through this list because we have a lot of creature tutors, specifically 2 field tutors, and potentially a Necrotic Ooze combo, right? Because there's a good synergy between that and the Mike and Trike combo. And that's sort of where my mind's at. If we're going to try to take this competitively, that's how I want to send this list off. But we're going to both start with and end with our land base first. Now, this is the only thing I'm going to do off camera for these videos, I believe, when it comes to sharing these cold brews with you all, strictly because it's there's a certain tedium with this, and most of your land base is going to be similar between, your mono colored list, your dual colored list, your triple quad, and then 5 colored list. And this is a cEDH channel, so expect to see dual lands, all the fetch lands, yada, yada, yada. So much of this is the same. However, I did go ahead and pick up some interesting utility lands that might be of benefit. Now, another thing is I like to start with at least 30 lands. We can remove or add as needed as we build the list, depending on our mana curve. But to start, we have Bayou down here. Should be fairly obvious. Bloodstained Mire, fetch land, City of Brass. I went ahead and added 2 rainbow lands. City of Brass and Mana Confluence, arguably the best rainbow lands, the ones you should always start with, and copies of which you should always own. We're not going to add Tarnished Citadel. We don't need to bolt ourselves here. I did not add the MDFCs that bolt us either. We can discuss whether or not we want them in this list later. But at least these two are good, you know. And I know a lot of people use Forbidden Orchard. I don't like giving my opponents any more value than I already am with Belbe, so we'll avoid that. I did an even split on Forest and Swamps for now. Obviously, we'll check our pips and see what we do or do not need. Guys, Cradle is always a must if you're in green. We'll see how many creatures we actually deploy. If we don't have enough, then maybe we take it out. Like the Dead is another shoe-in for a blacklist, particularly mono or dual. If you're over that, maybe reconsider using Lake of the Dead. I mean, like, even if you drop a Urborg in that list, I wouldn't recommend it unless you reliably have swamps to use. But obviously this is in the list because if we are dropping big spells, sacrificing a swamp for 4 black mana and then netting 4 to 6 mana off of Belbe is huge, right? And I'm not completely separating the thought of doing, you know, big dumb Eldrazi or some big dumb spells on our turn to just stomp our opponents out. But I do think our initial game plan is going to be dropping stacks and then setting up the Belbe turn, right? Leech-Ridden Swamp, which I'm on now. I'll read this one off. It's a bit of an oddity. I'm certain that not a lot of people have played this or heard of this. It's a land swamp. Leech-Ridden Swamp enters the battlefield tapped, and it has the ability to pay a black, tap it. Each opponent loses 1 life. Activate this only if you control 2 or more black permanents. Well, Belbe meets that requirement. It's a swamp, so we can fetch it. Obviously, that's there. We're likely going to fetch this off turn. I would definitely recommend holding off on fetching this prematurely. You never know when you need to drop that Assassin's Trophy, that Natural State, whatever it is in your hand. When the coast is clear, Leech-Ridden Swamp, because you're netting 6 generic mana. Mind you, you are trading 2 mana sources to do this, be it a land or a dork. You do need to tap something else out to pay for the activation cost, but it is going to net you 6 generic. So in my mind, if that's our main priority, we're probably going to go with a lot of things that have generic cost, right? So maybe we do Possessed Portal. Maybe we do Smokestacks. I don't know. We'll see as we go along. Mirror Pool is another utility land that I just want to discuss quickly. It sounds perfect. Image is crystal. Everything looks and sounds good to me. Awesome. And if at any point it's hard to hear me, just let me know. I'll go ahead and crank up my my Zoom recorder. So I have an interface off to the side doing all the audio. I was a little worried about that mucking up in OBS, but it looks good. It looks good. I also had another issue with the screen flickering. Please let me know if that happens. I don't know why. I consulted every forum I could, but it seems like there's just an issue with Mac / Streamlabs OBS. It's relatively new for Macintosh, and I've never used it before, but I did find a kind of fix for that. But let me know if it flickers too much in and out. I know it was really spazzing me out, so if it does that to you, we'll have to find an alternative to fixing that. At any rate, Mirror Pool, and thank you for letting me know. Okay. This is another oddity. Now, this is not something you can fetch with a regular fetch land, unfortunately. However, we can crop rotate this into play. And like I was saying, we've got a lot of 2-field creature tutors, and we've got some valid creature combos, A plus B creature combos. They're very expensive, but we can cheat them out with Belbe's ability and potentially this. So Mirror Pool, you can tap it for a generic, or colorless rather, 2 generic and a colorless to tap it, sacrifice Mirror Pool, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. I'll stop there. So this is the effect I'm actually concerned with. Much like I do in Wart, we can copy a creature tutor like Finale of Devastation, Chord of Calling, Eldritch Evolution, and get 2 creatures out of that, whatever the equation is. So in the instance of Finale of Devastation, we make 6, colorless mana from Belbe. Well, it just so happens that Triskelion and Machias both happen to be 6 mana. So provided we have the ramp and the means to do so, we can cast Finale of Devastation, crack that Mirror Pool, and get both out. Is it niche? Yes. So I didn't sideboard this or, maybe board this for the simple fact that I don't know if it's good or not yet. However, it is a thought and something I wanted to leave in the list for now. There are other pain lands. I think they call them the ones that do 1 damage to you, pain lands. I'm only adding Nurturing Peatland because our commander doesn't innately have draw, and you need draw. So Nurturing Peatland's in for that. And the rest of this is fairly obvious, right? I just pulled 2 Undergrowth Stadiums. One thing I'll note here is that Twilight Mire, all these filter lands, I always recommend you use them in your dual colored list. I'll say so here and in any future videos. These are excellent. You know, casting things like Necropotence, casting things even ad nauseum. You know, that's always the big spell in black. You need those double pips. So definitely consider your filter lands. They're pretty cheap now. This one's pretty cheap. Apparently, $4.65. So yeah, add that to Belbe. Now that we've got that all out of the way, what I want to cover first are those catalysts, the things that are going to get Belbe to trigger big for us and repeatedly. So here's exactly what I do. Here's my process for building a list. I don't go to EDH rec. I don't look up other lists. And this is what I recommend for you if you like brewing off the cuff. Go to advanced search. And the only thing I'm going to do here is go for my commander's color identity, or in Golgari. And we'll go ahead and type in the word opponent. That's it. You know, we might get a couple hundred search results, but I'll show you how we narrow this down. Now, I say opponent instead of opponents because I want to look up effects that potentially target and do reoccurring damage to a singular opponent. There might be some beneficial effects that I don't know about. And I usually limit my searches to one search term because there's plenty of old cards in Magic's history that don't use the same wording as a modern card and haven't been eroded to use that, that particular language. So I don't want to miss out on anything. I don't know what's popularly used in Belbe. Again, I've been trying to avoid looking at Belbe. One of our Patreon members sent me 2 lists that look fantastic, but I tried not to look over all the utilities. But the first thing we're going to search up is something that does life loss, and it's most likely going to be life loss in Golgari, probably black cards, or damage to each of our opponents. But we'll start here. And the other thing is, I want these to be reoccurring, and I mean for them to be permanents. I do not want to have to rely on an instant or sorcery or something that's non-permanent because I'm not going to use my forms of recursion, Eternal Witness, Noxious Revival, to bring those back up. I don't want to waste my turns doing that. So we're going to narrow this down to artifacts, enchantments, and creatures, right? And there's probably going to be a healthy chunk of all those things. And if you're on Scryfall, it's important you hit allow partial type matches. Otherwise, it will look for an artifact, creature, enchantment. And there might be one that affects opponents. I'm just looking over the chat once more before I begin this. Okay, good. All right, that's a lot. That is a whole lot of card. We've got 607 options here. The first thing I like to do, I like to look for the most efficient cards that do what I'm looking for. So we're going to go ahead and organize this by CMC. And when I click this, it should automatically arrange them from lowest to highest, which it did. We can obviously ignore any silver bordered cards, but all we're going to do now is search through this list. If we find anything of interest, we're going to go ahead and add it to our Belbe Corrupted Observer list. And we're going to add these all to the main board for now. Again, we're not certain whether we keep these cards in the list or not, but we'll find out. So I'll have this up. Black Vice, this is something that hits a singular opponent, but unfortunately, cards like Black Vice are only really good at the beginning of the game, right? Where X is the number of cards in his or her hand -4. So they need a hand for this to really do damage to them. So something like Black Vice we're going to avoid. Blood Chief Ascension we can avoid. Target opponent loses 4 life. See, this is not enough payoff for 8. We can skip through a lot of these. We likely want to add Carpet of Flowers, and I'll just go ahead and do that now. If we happen to see anything that is what I would consider a staple for these colors, I'll just go ahead and add them. You might have noticed with our land base, like I didn't add any of our tutors or any core removal cards. And we can just do that lastly. Again, we'll know however much we'll need at the end of building this. But the first thing we want to do is just get our core element out of the way, and that's triggering Belbe. Now, I think the first one we see here is Deathrite Shaman. So if you don't know what this is, it's also Golgari. That's a split cost, so black, green. The important thing to know, and I'll just go over the important notes on all these cards. Elf Shaman, 1/2 body, black, tap it, exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. There's always a lot of those. Each opponent loses 2 life. So even if it's just your instant or sorcery, you can go ahead and hit each opponent for 2 and trigger Belbe, right? And in the same vein, almost like Leech-Ridden Swamp, this is exactly, but Leech-Ridden's a little less damage. We are using 2 mana sources to do this because Deathrite, traditionally, you crack them to hit like a fetch land. But in this instance, I think this is going to be a really great way to trigger Belbe on our turn. If you've never used Tapped Out, they always put the newest cards at the bottom. It'll sort it out once we save this list. And I'll put a few more cards in before I save and continue there. Now, Gonti's Machinations is something that's really interesting. It's something I used in Tiny Bones for a brief while, and something I could definitely recommend to you for this. I think it's probably going to get sidelined, but for 1 black enchantment, whenever you lose life for the first time each turn, you get energy, right? We don't have a great or reliable way to do this. In Tiny Bones, you do, because when Tiny Bones triggers, you lose 1 life, right? So you build up the energy doing this. There's no other energy sub-theme I can think of that we're going to go for. However, for 2 energy, sacrifice Gonti's Machination. Each opponent loses 3 life. You gain life equal to life lost this way. That's 9. That's nearly a fourth of our starting total. So that's really not bad. Mind you, we don't have a great way to lose life for the first time every turn. So you can't do like a fetch land into a shock land and then hit yourself twice. You would just do a fetch land off turn maybe, and then another fetch land on your turn, if that happens to be the case. Or you have the Dark Confidant out, whatever. You've got some form of damage. I don't think that's ultimately going to make the cut. So I'm going to just ignore that for now. If we do happen to need more catalyst for the trigger, then of course we'll jump back to it. And I'm sorry if I'm missing any of your commentary on suggestible cards. I'll try to peel over these as we go along. None of these are great. You know, honestly, something like Keen Sense would be decent for the list because despite what everyone thinks, green doesn't have that much card draw, and if it did use card draw mechanics, it's usually contingent on a creature's power. So something like this wouldn't be horrible for the list, but we're going to ignore that for now as well. Let's go ahead and keep looking here. I know that there are creatures. There you go. Pulse Tracker. So for 1 black, I'll zoom in here so you can see a little bit better. Vampire Rogue, 1/1 body. Whenever Pulse Tracker attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. Okay. So Pulse Tracker reads to me like a 1 CMC dork that taps for 6. That's pretty good. That's really not bad. If my turn 1 was Pulse Tracker and my turn 2 was Belbe, then I can ramp out into something pretty menacing, right? And yeah, obviously it has to be generic in cost, but I think we're probably going to lean towards generic costed things or things that predominantly use generic. Pardon the ambulance. There's a fire department down the street from me. I live on a road that's like down the street from both a hospital and a fire department, which is good. But then you get that. All right, so moving on. Quest for the Nihil Stone is not something we're going to use. Whenever it dies, deals 2 damage to each opponent. So there you go. There's damage to each opponent. Set that up with your Keen Sense, right? So you can draw 3 cards. No, this is just too. No, it's never gonna be great. I mean, if we added Phyrexian Tower to the list, right? We would have a way to sacrifice it on command and then do the damage. The life gain is cute. Probably not necessary in this regard. Let me see here. That's essentially Zoncha, right? Sleeper Agent, black. Whenever Sleeper Agent comes into play, target opponent gains control of it. At the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 2 damage to... No. So my qualm here is that you're giving them a 3/3 body to just probably reliably swing at someone and tap for a Soul Ring. That's what we're going to call Belbe's ability. Tapping for a Soul Ring. And there's another one. Okay, so we have Thornbow Archer here. Same concept as our Pulse Tracker. For a black, 1/2 body, a little bit better. So, you know, you can reliably swing this at a dork an opponent has and expect to get in. But mind you, you only need to attack with this creature. So maybe Maze of Ith. Maybe Maze of Ith. If you don't know what that land is, you can untap an attacking creature. So you can get the trigger and still save the creature even if there isn't a good attack. We'll consider that. But Thornbow, when he attacks, you do 1 damage to anyone who doesn't control an elf. So it depends on your meta. Like last night, no one was playing green except for me when I was playing Ashaya. I had a get together last night. We filmed a Brew Wars, specifically a holiday special. So hang tight for that. It's going to be very fun. Spoiler, the episode is called 2 Turtle Doves. But Thornbow Archer. I think we want this. Who knows if it lives up to our expectations? Unfortunately, the issue with there being other elves on the board might throw that one off, but that's okay. I do think we still have a few more that actually do that in the 1 CMC range, so we'll try to find them now. So let's go ahead and see if we can't pick them out. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. That's not what we... There we go. Each opponent loses 1 life. And note, hey, look, if they control vampires, it doesn't care. So it's a 1/2 body. It's exactly the same thing, but better. Vicious Conquistador. Now, if we need to remove one of these, we'll likely remove the Thornbow Archer, despite the fact that Pulse Tracker is a weaker body. The simple fact that we can reliably make 6 mana by swinging is important. And you know what? Some of you have mentioned it. Maze of Ith, yeah, I agree. It might be good. It might be good. Again, we're likely going to remove some lands or add some lands at the end of this, depending on how well this list comes together. And of course, I'm going to try to play out a few hands with you before we close this out. So it's not a dead stop at 4 p.m. Obviously, if you want to see if what we constructed was any good, then hang out and maybe we'll test it out. So things like the parapet here, each opponent loses 1 life. It loses all its utility by being a defender, right? So it's a 0/5 body. You need to tap it out to do that. And you're not going to want to do that off turn. You're going to want to do that on turn. So you really have a 0/5 non-blocker, right? So we're not going to use anything like the parapet. It's not good. Let me know if I missed one of anything that we came up with or went through. I'm seeing some suggestions here. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may have that player lose 1 life. Well, that's not going to work for us, is it? We start to go through these a little bit quicker. Some of these cards, and I do this every single time I build a list, so, I remember what Catalyst Stone does. I remember what Compost does. I don't really need to look through them. 1 damage to any target, 1 damage to any target an opponent's choice. Okay. That's cute. It's going to kill our Pulse Tracker. Don't like that. When Turtler's attack, untap all non-land permanents you control. Each opponent attacking that player untaps all. That's a lot of value to give to someone. It's a lot of bounty. I think we're going to avoid that too. Although that's a really interesting card. Each opponent who voted for a choice you didn't vote for. No, I'm not trying to leave any of this up to chance. Jinxed Ring is cute. Jinxed Idol is even cuter. At the beginning of your upkeep, Jinxed Idol deals 2 damage to you. Okay. No, we don't really have the bodies. We're not generating bodies. Maybe for the new Golgari elf that came out, the one that's producing bodies. I was talking with someone about it last night. I was talking to Rebel about it last night. It seems like Belbe bait. Good old Belbe bait. The Coldheim elf. I forget her name. But you can talk about her in chat. She seems really good. There's definitely potential there. I might want to look into that after this. Whenever a healer or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now, this is already starting to lose value for me because we're in the 2 CMC range and it's not quite repeatable and we don't have that many allies. This is a one-time trigger. I don't see us wanting to use that. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Sacking a creature with the Lamphead sounds kind of cool. If we're using something like Bitter Blossom or Ophiomancer for protection, potentially, right? Because Ophiomancer makes those snakes on every upkeep, so you'll always have something to break. And then still have the snake to Death Touch and block. But we're moving on. I know that there's a shrine that does this too that came out recently. And I'm going to probably work my way to that and then call it a day with these potential effects. We definitely need more, but I'm going to look up different search terms for that. And just depending on how far we've, gone through this list, we can, set aside which cards we do or do not need. But we have 4 already with this. So, yeah. 1 generic, 1 black, legendary enchantment shrine, uncommon. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of shrines that you control. Well, we're probably just going to have the 1. But Sanctum of Stonefangs seems like it's for the list. Unfortunately, Sanctum of Stonefangs, it fits into the same curve as Belbe, right? So, I mean, I really like the 1 CMC ones because I can, reliably drop them and go into Belbe, have the mana, to drop my stacks piece. But that's still good. That's still very good. I think what we're going to do is leave the cutoff at 3 CMC with any of these potential effects, because anything beyond that seems a little too costly to me. And again, we have a lot of tutors. A lot of tutors in this list. Unfortunately, I think all of these creatures were black, except for the Thornbow Archer. So something like Green Sun Zenith isn't going to be able to cheat them out. Thornbow, I'll have to look at Thornbow Archer again. I think it might have been green. I want to make use of Green Sun Zenith if I can, and I don't just mean for Dryad Arbor, which I've lovingly omitted from my land base, actually. Attacks, if you control Vraska Plains, haha, nah, we don't. Whenever you surveil for the first time, nope. Nope. So none of these. Yeah, we're moving along, Zulport Cutthroat, so we're going to go to 3 now. There we go. Let's see here. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Ayara. Ayara, you try so hard. There's card draw there. That's cool. Triple black. That really damned Ayara, I have to say. But at least it just needs to be black creatures entering the battlefield. Not great. So this is okay. I really like Bontu's Monument. Now, why Bontu's is good is that you can use it as a combo card. Now, if I was, do a little sidebar here. So if I was going to use Belbe plus Gravecrawler, and I was relying on a lot of stacks effects for this list. Let's just say that I had a tax on the board, Sphere of Resistance. Everything costs 1 more. Well, Bontu's Monument makes sure that my Gravecrawler is still just 1 CMC. And I can go ahead and sacrifice Gravecrawler and cast it from my graveyard because Belbe happens to be a zombie. I'm not sure I'm going this route, but I am definitely going to rely on stacks pieces that tax the board, as well as things that just stop the board, like Collector Oof, Null Rod, Root Maze. We're going to probably add those in because Belbe is definitely looking like a slower list, right? So we might have time to go into Bontu's Monument, and it's 3 CMC, 3 generic, so we can very reliably throw this down and make the rest of our game cheaper, right? If the creature happens to be black. But again, Bontu's Monument, giving that cost reduction, gets past our own tax, and it obviously staves off any potential free spell if someone's tapped out. But it also is pinging everyone for 1 and gaining 1 life in the interim, right? Just for any creature cast, you know, beyond this particular combo. So maybe that's good. And I'm sorry, if you don't know what Gravecrawler is, it's a 1 CMC body, a zombie that says you can cast it from your graveyard if you control a zombie. So probably the most relevant combo piece that can rely on Belbe, right? You can also do this with something like Carnival of Souls. Carnival of Souls makes you lose a life in the exchange. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you gain a swamp and lose a life. And that means your opponents too. I'm paraphrasing, but I believe that's how it reads. With Bontu's Monument, you gain that life back, so you're net neutral, and then people are just losing life, right? So if you had a sack outlet, whatever the sack outlet, maybe that thing that sacrifices creatures to do 1 damage to everyone, whatever that was, right? You're making the mana. You'd need an additional mana. At any rate, you get where I'm going. Bontu's Monument, it is a finisher. And it also reliably helps you cast your black creatures. So if Belbe dies, she's a little bit cheaper. I think we're going to avoid it, though, for now. I'm going to probably go the route of Mike and Trike and potentially Necrotic Ooze and Phyrexian Devourer. But there's a minor caveat to the Phyrexian Devourer we can go over later. Again, if we pass 3 and don't see any more life loss, we'll switch our search terms and see if we can't find anything else. Because I don't want to go beyond 3. I think that these cards are going to begin to lose their utility at that point, and up until when we could have cast this, we've just been giving our opponents generic mana. And the other thing that we'll discuss is when we cast Belbe, if we really play her out on curve, it's really going to depend on our hand. You know, we don't want to just give value to our opponents, particularly if someone's using a creature-based strategy. Most cEDH tables I see, we had a Tana Nadir player last night, and he was dropping a lot of tokens, a lot of bodies, so he would definitely benefit from this, but that seems rare. I feel like that's a new partner pairing that may or may not stay in existence. At the beginning of your end step, if you are the Monarch, I'm not sure we're going to run any Monarchy cards, although we'll try to keep Garrulous Sycophant in mind. If I mispronounce anything, let me know. I am pretty sure we're nearing the end of this and there's nothing. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses. Okay, that's kind of cool. Well, if you've ever wanted to use Hooded Blightfang, this might be the list. Now, why I like this, why I'm even looking at this, is the 2 generic and the cost. It's really easy to put out. Hooded Blightfang really puts out. It's very easy to drop, right? Because a subsequent turn, you do the damage with, let's just say we swing with Belbe, we make 2 generic, and we can drop Hooded Blightfang. So we have a really excellent blocker at 1/4. Obviously, if they have evasion by way of flying, they can get over this. But you know, why are they really attacking you when they can get generic for attacking someone else? This is interesting. I think I'll add Hooded Blightfang for now. Again, I'm not sure that this one stays. And we'll figure that out as we go along. But again, 3 CMC is still rough, especially if the Belbe plan goes south. Iron Maiden, during each opponent's upkeep, that's not really a benefit for us, is it? I'm not hating Bontu's Monument, to be honest. Like, if we're going to reach the end of this list and I don't at least have 5 of these catalysts, let me see here. Deathrite Shaman 1, 2, hey, Deathrite Shaman, that's definitely bait for our Green Sun Zenith. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll put Bontu's in for now. Only because we could potentially go a route where we do use Gravecrawler, right? And I like to make use of every utility I can in a given color. And there's a card called Buried Alive that black utilizes. That would be really good for this. If we had some sort of creature line assembled on the board, we can bury alive the utilities we need to benefit from that. So either Entomb, Buried Alive. Entomb is what you most frequently see. It's definitely the better card. But Buried Alive, if I'm not mistaken, is 2 generic and 1 black. So we can very easily set that up with Belbe's effect. Again, you're definitely going to want reliable stacks. Mana Web is interesting. Now, I'm not on Urborg, but we could be on Urborg. But Mana Web, this is not a utility for Belbe specifically. I've actually talked about Mana Web in a past video. I believe it was the Hidden Gems Artifacts. It's one of my favorite stacks pieces that's kind of underrated because it goes under the radar. But if you have a land, whenever a land, I think it's been slightly eroded, we'll see. Whenever a land an opponent controls is tapped for mana, tap all lands that player controls that could produce any type of mana that land could produce. So like a rainbow land, it could produce 1 mana of any color. This will tap down any given color. And if we have Urborg on the field, well then everything's a swamp and could produce black. So it works very well in tandem with that. Maybe that's one of the pieces we use because we want to slow lists down, but most of the time when someone's playing a proactive list in the current cEDH meta, they're relying on fast mana and or treasure manipulation with Dockside Extortionist. So something like Manglehorn, which is right next to it, is clearly better, right? Artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield to tap. You can add Naz, but you're not going to be doing anything with that Mana Crypt, with that Lotus Petal. Name every single 0-cost mana rock. So let's just go ahead and add our Manglehorn now, because I know for a fact I'm going to run it. It's interesting, Manglehorn for me replaced Reclamation Sage in all of my current lists because Rec Sage doesn't cut it. There are genuinely not enough enchantments that threaten my particular board state. Rest in Peace did really screw me over last night. Maybe I needed a Rec Sage. But for the most part, Manglehorn, again, 2 generic, 1 pip. Looking for those generic cost, this is going to be really great for slowing down those quicker list. And very easy to slam with Belbe. Even if it's just hitting an Arcane Signet or a Soul Ring while it jumps into play, you're slowing them down quite a bit. So, man, I don't know if we're going to find... Whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, Nadir's Nightblade. Nope. I wish we had some token synergy here. I would never rely on a token synergy card unless my commander or a card I was shooting for reliably worked with tokens. I'm going to actually just take a second to look over your commentary. I feel bad that I see there's a lot of chat going on. I'm not reading over anything. You missed Mardu Shadow Spear. There's another 1-cost pinger. Mardu Shadow Sphere. You know what? Why don't we look that up now? Mardu Shadow Spear. Is this each opponent? We're chugging along here with my laptop. There's just a lot of demanding things going on, so if it gets a little sluggish, pardon that. But yeah, whenever Mardu Shadow Spear attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. You got dash too. I don't think we're going to use the dash, but you're right. Thank you. Let me know if I missed anything else. That one's very valuable. And I'm looking at the chat now for that. So, okay. Blood Chief Ascension, I don't think we're going to reliably have pop off. That does have a prerequisite before they start losing life, right? Sanctum of, yep. Have that. Spawn of Mayhem, possibly Rankle. Yeah, Rankle. Is Vicious Rumors okay? You know, I like Vicious Rumors a lot. It's obviously a card I use in Tiny Bones, so I do like it. It is okay. It's more than okay. I think that you can really disrupt someone with the discard. We'll put in Vicious Rumors for now. I don't. I like it. I like it a lot. It does a lot of things, a little in a lot of different categories. I'm going to hold off on putting that in here. Again, we want to rely on permanence. I do like Vicious Rumors, though. And lastly, I see as recommended Night Market Lookout. Night Market Lookout. I know the art for this card. Is it 2 words for Night Market? Becomes tapped. Where's your Springleaf Drum, right? Where's your Earthcraft? I don't think we're gonna be using either of those two. We could, but yeah. Okay, we're putting Night Market Lookout. I missed it. This bordering. I usually ignore these borders. I don't know why. What is this for? Is it like some sort of online variant? Night Market Lookout though, so good. Thank you. That was a really good suggestion as well. And if you want, I'm going to go ahead if you're jumping into the stream now. I'm just going to hover over our most recent additions. These are all I have thus far for pingers. Ideally, again, multiple opponents with this. This is actually a really good mix. We probably will take out the Hooded Blightfang, provided this is enough. Extortion is a unique effect. I think Crypt Gas is a little... Do we need Crypt Gas? Like, beyond, obviously, the extortion on that card, do we need Crypt Gas? I think we'll figure that out later. Like, the ramp potential from that is really great. I might refill my coffee in a few, so I'm actually just going to take a second to look over your commentary. We're 43 minutes in, and we're just working out the basics. Great. Kaladesh Remastered. Okay. So glad you started doing that. Yay, me too. Loyal Subordinate? Loyal Subordinate. Thrall Parasite is 1 CMC Extorter. You do need to pay repeatedly for the extort, right? It's like a black and a white. It's black. So potentially good. I don't know. If it was like... I like extortion placed on effects or cards that are valuable. Like Blind Obedience in white is fantastic. Beyond also being a card with extortion. So if we have a card like that, like a stacks piece or a hate piece that also has extortion, feel free to shout that out and I'll look into it. We got Sanctum of Stonefangs. We have the... Oh! We have that. But thank you. Thrall Parasite can also remove counters from permanents. Okay. Potentially good. Is that... well, let's look at Thrall Parasite. Is that, like, immediately repeatable? Thrall Parasite. We do have the pulse tracker. What do you think of the Parasite? What do y'all think of the Parasite? Would you want this? I'll just hover the text. God Pharaoh's statue? Oh yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree with the fact that you have to repeatedly pay for it. What's nice is you can do this off turn if you wanted, but that's of no benefit to you. Extortion, generally, I look at as a potential outlet for certain decks, provided you have the ability to cast a card infinitely with the mana requisite to pay the effect. It's good. In Extort, actually, there are ways to combo. I mentioned Carnival of Souls earlier. You're asking a lot, right? I try to limit my combos down to 4 cards at most when I build combos and list infinite combos in particular, and one of those cards should be in the command zone. So if I'm looking at Thrall Parasite and I'm thinking, well, how can I really leverage Extort if I wanted to go this route? If I just wanted this as a pinger, we could add Carnival of Souls again, and I'll just bring that up. It's an older card, but a goodie. Okay. So this is the card I was talking about. 1 generic, 1 black. Whenever a creature comes into play, you lose 1 life and add mana to your mana pool. So again, Phyrexian Altar, Gravecrawler, Belbe, Parasite, Carnival of Souls. Like, we just passed the mark for what I think is a solid combo, despite Belbe being in there. And again, we don't need to look at the Thrall Parasite as a combo card, but generally speaking, I'm not going to want to do the Extort elsewise. But bear in mind Carnival of Souls. Again, what's unique about this is that you're gaining life from the extortion, so, you don't really hurt yourself for doing Carnival of Souls. Mind you, though, if someone else has a strategy that utilizes, I don't know, Emil, Cloudstone Curio, or whatever, Tamir Sabertooth and Dockside Extortionist, they're going to just murder you for playing Carnival of Souls without having like a payoff or like immediately going off with Carnival of Souls. It's a tricky card. I don't always recommend it. Again, I just want to hit the 4 CMC cards and I think we can move on. There's also one other card that's expensive called Phyrexian Psychosis Crawler. I want to take a gander at that. If I remember correctly, I think that's a good synergy for the list, and it's very easy to play provided you are, getting the pings. So we'll look at that in a second. Opposition Agent, are we going to play that? Well, we've been stopping and adding certain hate bears. So Opposition Agent's like Stranglehold, and then a one-time free tutor. This list might reliably need more tutors, so we'll drop Opposition Agent in for now. Again, we're not as proactive a list as some, so we can definitely rely on more hate bears and stacks pieces. So Opposition Agent's great. It does require that they remove it to play out their game plan should they be utilizing tutors, right? So we want it. Just looking over your commentary. Psychosis Crawler is the draw pinger. Yes. So we'll take a gander at that after the fact. And if we want to fit in some sort of draw sub-theme that works with Psychosis Crawler, because off the very beginning of this video, I mentioned it already, but my initial thought was something to do with Machias and Triskelion. They're both 6 CMC, so provided we're able to drop one of those, like Tooth and Nail and or Court of Calling, we can go for Psychosis Crawler. And if we had a good way to manipulate draw, we can ping people, make mana, yada, yada, yada. It might be just too cute for the list, but it's a thing. I've always wanted to use it. Psychosis Crawler always comes up in a lot of my searches, and it's an interesting one. Each opponent loses 1 life. You gain 1 life whenever someone becomes untapped. So this is essentially... That's kind of cool. I don't think this makes the cut. Trying to go along with you all while we look at these cards. I don't think this makes the cut. I think we've got enough, actually, so far as the pingers are concerned. But this is kind of important to note. The inspired effect here becomes untapped. Each opponent loses 1 life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. So you gain 3 life for this? I mean, that's really not bad. And again, this is very easy to put down. You know what? If we're going to have Hooded Blightfang there, I think Hooded Blightfang is better. I'm also going to go ahead and add the Servant of Tiamat. As a potential maybe. Again, we're going to add more cards than we need necessarily, right? And we'll cut as we go along. I'm obviously going to favor the ones that are lower CMC, because even if this is easily cheated out with Belbe's ability, I do want to use that mana to, in effect, put down stacks pieces, right? probably going to rely on a lot of stacks pieces in this list. So we'll see if that actually makes the cut. 1 damage to each opponent. And you gain 1 life. Okay. Slimefoot, I see you. Let me see here. Retreat to Hagra. Retreat to Hagra is good. Okay. You know what? Let's look at the... yes, Orin Frostfang is a favorite of mine. If we're talking about the big beater that gives everything death touch when they're swinging and lets you draw a lot of cards, yeah. We'll probably consider that. You know what? I'll look up this... I think I know what this card does, but let me look over it. Retreat to Hagra. And thank you all for the suggestions. Yeah. Okay. So this is a landfall effect. We are not really manipulating lands here, but we do use a lot of lands. So even if this is really just, you getting your fetch for the turn and dropping it to ping. So this is permanent and it has repeatable value. I like it. I think that this is certainly better than the Snake and the Servant of Tiamat, however you pronounce that. So we'll put the Retreat to Hagra in here. We'll definitely add that for now. I like that. Or not. Or not. Sometimes it has hiccups searching. There we go. And to save ourselves the trouble, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm just going to copy and cut this, paste it over here, and we'll do the same for the Servant. If we find we need more while we're testing, then of course, we'll add them back. But I don't think we're going to need much more than this. As a matter of fact, I think we're good to move on from here. Let's just go ahead and take a look at the kind of... Now that we've assembled the catalyst for Belbe, the next thing that I would personally want to do is consider our win conditions, right? And how best to accomplish them. Now, I can already tell you that I'm probably going to try to wean off of artifacts in this list because I'm going to want to hit them hard. In the current cEDH meta, artifacts are reliably what is used for ramp. And because we're in green, we do have the benefit of dorks. So we can go ahead and add our dorks in just a second. But I do want to take a look at our win cons and just put them in the list for now. And we can discuss how we can functionally win with them. So let's do that first. But I think that the list is in a good place so far as those pingers are concerned, that we can stop there. Now, Machias and Triskelion, if you don't know the combo, this also works with Walking Ballista, but Machias Unhallowed, other non-human creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Undying. So with Triskelion, who comes into play with counters, if I'm not mistaken, comes into play with 3. Whoops. Trisket over here allows you to remove a counter and deal 1 damage to any target, right? It's been eroded. So you'll, because of the +1/+1, you'll ping one person, zap itself, ping one person, zap itself, because it's a 2/2 at this point, due to Machias, but it will repeatedly come back with the Undying, right? So let's just go ahead and add that now. I think that's the probably the best potential A+B combo for this list if we're going to go for one. And again, we might even remove this if we want to go for some sort of attrition combo instead, something that's not infinite. But who am I kidding? Of course, I want that old school Triskelion art. I want this Antiquities art in the list. Any excuse to use that. Machias, the Unhallowed or whatever. Yeah, okay. So we want those. Now, here's what I was talking about earlier. Necrotic Ooze is something that synergies well with this particular playline, provided there's another card in the list. And there's a couple of Necrotic Ooze combos. Yeah, thank you. Is that... I'll save it, sure. Necrotic Ooze is interesting. It's a card I've always wanted to manipulate. It's just a little slow, but if we're playing the game slow, if we're setting the pace of this game, I think we'll be able to get there. And we're also producing a lot of mana, so we should be able to utilize effects to get this out early and hopefully win with it. So as long as Necrotic Ooze is on the battlefield, it has all activated abilities of all creature cards in all graveyards. It's a 4/3 body. It's not often, but yes, you can assemble combos with opposing graveyards. You know, you don't have to have your Walking Ballista in your graveyard. If you just happen to take out the Heliod player's Walking Ballista, remember that. Because all you need is the Triskelion, or sorry, not Triskelion. With this particular play line, right? Let's just say we had the Walking Ballista. The 1/2, the A plus B plus C combo here is with, I think its name is Phyrexian Devourer. It's like an old Alliances card. There we go. Okay, so the card we're looking at has been eroded, but it's been eroded further, and that's important because we're only going to look at the activated effect here. Exile the top card of your library, put X +1/+1 counters on Phyrexian Devourer, where X is the exiled card's converted mana cost. This is tricky, right? So Necrotic Ooze, and then Walking Ballista in the Heliod list, or your own Triskelion with Phyrexian Devourer in the graveyard. So this could look like Buried Alive, reanimate Necrotic Ooze. I have buried Phyrexian Devourer and Triskelion. I'm able to exile the top cards of my list, and I don't ever have to worry about the triggered ability on Phyrexian Devourer because Necrotic Ooze doesn't adopt that. The way it read before was very confusing, right? So they've changed that, so it obviously works. So basically, you can make Necrotic Ooze massive, and if someone tries to remove it, I'm going to exile the next card, and you just keep going through your list. So you do need to hit a certain threshold of +1/+1 counters to remove, utilizing the Triskelion effect to kill your opponents. And the way we're building this list now, it looks like our CMC is on the lower end, right? So maybe there is some merit to having just big beaters or just big cards, big spells to drop, because then it does give life to the Phyrexian Devourer line. But I don't want us to go that route simply because we want to use Necrotic Ooze. It should be good for the list, right? So when I look at combos and how we can rely on them in a particular build, I look at whether it helps or hinders our given legendary or choice of partners, or it helps them. And Necrotic Ooze doesn't necessarily help this build beyond this combo. However, we can still go this route should we like. I think for now we'll probably just stick with Micaias and Triskelion as like the 1-2 punch. Maybe we can rely on, and Tooth and Nail, super playable. Hermit Druid, yeah, we could do a Hermit Druid into the reanimation. We just dump everything, but then again, we need to have the deck to be able to exile things, right? Unless I'm misreading what you're saying here. You can use Protean Hulk, to tutor up the build. So if someone mentioned Protean Hulk here, yes, you can use Protean Hulk. So if you do Protean Hulk, the build is going to look like Phyrexian. I forget its name. It's like a 5 CMC card. There's a little bit more setup when you do this, right? So if we did Protean Hulk, and you likely all know what Protean Hulk is. I believe Protean is 7 CMC. When it dies, you can search up to 6 CMC worth of creatures from your list. So you all know this. It's old Flash pairing. That just wins the game on sight, right? Very, very menacing. I think that Protean Hulk's a little clunky, particularly because we don't have self-sacrifice effects built into our list. So if we were to do this, you would go Tooth and Nail, and you bring out, you just tutor for Protean Hulk and you kill it, right? So you need to get a Viscera Seer or Carrion Feeder or 1 CMC creature that lets you sacrifice a creature, and Phyrexian Delver, because that equals 6 CMC. And then when you do that, obviously he'll ETB, bring back Protean Hulk, then you can kill Protean Hulk again to get Micaias and Walking Ballista, Micaias being 6 CMC. And obviously, as they both enter the battlefield, Micaias will recognize the Walking Ballista, give it the +1/+1. You need to sacrifice it. And this is why the caveat of Viscera Seer and Carrion Feeder, right? So you're setting yourself up for a combo potential there. I've done this before in earlier lists and previous lists. Again, it's a little clunky. You're adding a lot of effects or cards into the list that don't feel great. But we can go the Protean Hulk route. If you all think that Protean Hulk might be good, we can do that. But I do think that ultimately we're going to rely on trying to get Mike and Trike out and protect them. And then this is maybe where it's good to have more reliable, repeatable damage effects on board, because we might just go for that ultimately. But I think with Mike and Trike, we're good to go and just add our tutors, right? So we know that we want them both out. And we also know that we want some 2 field creature tutors. So we'll do Court of Calling. Court of Calling. We'll also do Finale of Devastation. This is an amazing one, particularly with the mana gain from Belbe. We can very easily hit 10 for X. If you don't know what Finale of Devastation is, I believe it's double green and X. And basically it's a creature tutor to field, but specifically good because you can also search your graveyard, mind you. I'll just read it off. Search your library for and/or graveyard for a creature card with converted mana cost of X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X and haste. So honestly, this is a very easy finisher for the list. Even if what we're dropping is just a bomb, giving the rest of our board all these dumb, pingers +X +10 is a really big deal. Mind you, they do need some form of evasion or trample, and by this point of the game, when you've done this, what I'm talking about, folks are likely between 28 and 35 life, right? You've been doing damage. They've been doing damage to themselves. So you can finish a board with Finale of Devastation, but we're not reliably going to do that, right? So we've added those two. I think we can add... Eldritch Evolution is good. Natural Order is good. But I think we're probably going to avoid Eldritch here. No, okay, so my mind is still on Necrotic Ooze. And Belbe's 2 CMC, right? So Eldritch Evolution is 1 generic, double green. You have an additional cost, you have to sacrifice a creature. However, you search your library for a creature with a converted mana cost of X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. So you always go up 2, right? Mind you, less. You can find under that, but if we sacrifice Belbe, we can get a 4-drop, that 4-drop being Necrotic Ooze. So we can set ourselves up for the Mike Trike play, or rather, the Phyrexian Devourer Triskelion play with that. Yeah, that's asking a lot. We don't have very many ways to put creatures into our graveyard. I'll just add Eldritch Evolution for now. It's a good card. It's a good card. And if we happen to use the elf, the 4 CMC elf that attacked, the Death Touch elf draws cards in chat, someone let me know what that is. It costs 2 less if an opponent has a green permanent. I always forget the name of that card. If we have that, he's 4 CMC, you sacrifice him, you get a 6-drop. It's good. Yes, Okame Adversary. Okame Adversary, that's it. Yes, we'll add that. We'll add that now. I think we're at a lack of card draw. So in the midst of doing this, let's just go ahead and add our Sylvan Library. We know we want Sylvan Library. We'll just cover our card draw and tutors now. Okame Adversary. Someone mentioned Orin Frostfang. Yes. Orin might be removed if we don't have enough creatures, right? If we're not reliably putting out enough creatures, then maybe that's not good. But we also want to add Dark Confidant. It's not necessarily draw, it's better. I have a hard-on for Dark Tutelage, so we'll put Dark Tutelage in. Very easy to cast with Belbe, the double generic, right? Dark Tutelage is essentially Dark Confidant as an enchantment. Maybe something simple like Exsanguinate or Boseiju. Yeah. Yeah. I think that Runic Armasaur never does the trick. Yeah, I like Runic Armasaur, but it just never... Yes, you're right. At least with the blowout with Finale. You're definitely right with the blowout. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah, it seems clunky. Runic Armasaur is fine. We can look it up. We're not really done with the tutors, but as a potential draw engine, activates an ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability. You may draw a card. You are thinking of fetch lands, right? Your Prismatic Vista, your Chance Fabled Passage, and then all of your Arid Maces and all that stuff, right? So you get to draw a card. This is not a deterrent from people actually fetching with said card. But what's nice is that it's 3 CMC for a 2/5, right? So 3 CMC for a 2/5 that potentially draws, and there are some activated abilities on creatures you see. I don't know, like a Caustic Caterpillar. If someone's popping off with Razaketh, you really need that draw. But I don't think it triggers enough. It is just a little, someone mentioned it's just a little clunky of a card for me. But obviously, we need an Imperial Seal. We're going to start with all the black tutors here. Now let's see if we can remember them off the top of our head. Vampiric Tutor. Vampiric Tutor. Obviously the best tutor with Demonic Tutor. Ain't none better. We're going to use Diabolic Intent. Diabolic Intent requires you sacrifice a creature. At this point, let's just say that we've, done the effect with our Pulse Tracker. We can sacrifice the Pulse Tracker with the excess generic mana and get popping off on a combo with that, if we're in the zone to actually drop the Myke and Trike. I like the idea of the Exsanguinate, by the way. We're actually going to look up some other payoffs, because obviously Machias and Triskelion are not a solid enough game plan for me. You can also go the Necrotic Ooze route. I think there is merit there. But again, we don't really have the high CMC necessary to get the threshold of +1/+1 counters. So what I want to do is look up X spells after this as other potential payoffs or just value pieces. The Astral Cornucopias of the world. Probably not using that. Everflowing Chalice, maybe. So we're also going to look up keywords too. I want to look up kicker, multi-kicker, anything in the text box that requires a generic cost. Tooth and Nail, I know we've mentioned it already. Entwine, that's a big one. We definitely want our Tooth and Nail in here. It's just auto Myke Trike, right? We want that. Yes, so yes, let's go ahead and take a second to add our dorks as well. I want to clear all the basics out of the way to know how much space we're working with. The last thing we're going to do is add interaction and interaction package. And the way I like to look at interaction is considering what you're up against in your meta. It's really mostly meta dependent, but specifically if you fight a lot of proactive lists, the kind of shutdown pieces you can run, as well as what a mid-range deck might have that goes against your own plan. And right now, creature activation is important. So having removal for a Cursed Totem or a Linvala is probably important. So we're probably going to add Deadly Relic, all that stuff, but I'm going to look at that later. I think that we have... Sorry, we sort of diverted from the tutor suite. But we do want to add a few more. I think we're going to add a Worldly Tutor, but not Sylvan Tutor. Sylvan Tutor is Imperial Seal. And this might be a hot take, is not great. Sylvan Tutor is really not great, right? You're removing something from your hand, putting it on top of your deck. That can very easily get disrupted. I've seen it happen multiple times, with me in particular. I love Codex shredding that shit. However, Imperial Seal is a necessary evil. It's also very expensive. I hope we get a reprint soon. I think everyone was hoping for a reprint this year. The Vamp Tutor reprint in Commander Legends was great, but I think we were all really itching for Imperial Seal. If you're wondering, it's not reserved, and it is over $400. I know, because I sold mine previously. No reason to hold on to something that's not reserved list. That's that stupidly expensive. But yeah, we're going to avoid Sylvan Tutor because there's not really a creature, a singular creature we want to put on top of our deck. We want to cheat these creatures onto the battlefield, right? And the last creature tutor to mention is Natural Order. Natural Order may go in... Machias is black, Triskelion is colorless. Natural Order doesn't hit either one of them, right? And those are our combo pieces. This is 4 CMC. It's reduced with our ability from Belbe. Orin Frostfang's a big drop, but like, we're making so much mana that just the Sylvan Tutor in that instance is even better. So we're going to avoid Natural Order here. And yes, let's go ahead and hit our dorks. I always forget a handful, but let's do Llanowar Elves. God, can't type for the life of me. Llanowar Elves. We've got our Deathrite Shaman. We want our Finehorn Elves. Arbor, we'll do Arbor Elf. Technically one of the better elves, provided you have a dual land, right? Arbor Elf. Elvish Mystic. Is someone... Yes. I got my cheat sheet down here. There's the one that taps for black as well. We're only doing the 1 mana dorks. Mind you, you know, these... you still need the excess mana to make those big plays, right? So we do want our dorks. I was contemplating like how many dorks we actually run, or even if we run all of these dorks. Let's just go ahead and throw them in. We'll remove any that seem excessive, because I think most of our game plan is going to rely on lower CMC effects leading up to big casts. So we might not need all of the elves. Boreal Druid, I think that's the generic tapping one. Yes. Elves of Deep Shadow, yes. Thank you, by the way. Elves of Deep Shadow pings you. That's useful. Yes, Bop. Birds of Paradise. We want the birds. And, I'm going to avoid Boreal Druid off the bat here. I don't like Boreal Druid. We're making enough generic, and Boreal doesn't... We'll avoid Boreal. I think for now we probably don't need that. With that, I think we have them all out of the way. Yes, so far as fast mana is concerned, we can look at our fast mana now as well. The only thing we want to add to our suite is Soul Ring. Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, right? Some of the obvious ones. These are going to help us cheat out our generic costed stacks pieces early on. Soul Ring, Mana Crypt. I don't think we need Mana Vault. I don't think we need Grim Monolith. The signets are fine. So, off the bat, I talked about dropping Peer into the Abyss or dropping Ad Nauseam. I think that we might just add Peer into the Abyss, PETA, and stop there. Because if we can manually assemble a win off of one of these larger spells, oh no, is Scryfall not working anymore? If we can manually assemble our combo with one of these larger draw spells, Adnos isn't draw, but you know what I'm saying, then maybe we want to add more fast mana, right? But I don't see us going that route, and I almost see us not using either of these effects, although I think there's certainly merit in discussing a turbo, Belbe, Adnos, or Peer into the Abyss, because you very easily get there, right? Is Mox Amber playable? No, I agree. I think Ad Nauseam and Peer into the Abyss. Okay, well, Peer into the Abyss is really good here. It's not good when someone deflecting swats it, right? Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. Yes, you can deflecting swat this. I still think this is still very valid for the list. Whether you tell your opponent, I found this to be true in every case, but generally if you're playing black, people will swing at you. And that's because of Necropotence, Ad Nauseam, and Peer into the Abyss. And no matter what you tell them, even if I said I'm not using Ad Nauseam, even if I said I'm not using Peer into the Abyss, I find you still get swung at. At least in the instance of Peer into the Abyss, you still get to draw half your deck. Manually assembling a combo that way seems a little tricky, right? But I think we might be able to manage it. And only then would I consider adding any more of the fast mana, right? Having the Mana Vault and such. But let's go ahead and do, I'll add Mox Amber. I'll humor that. I think it's good. I only use Mox Amber in my Rograk Tymna list, mind you. And that's because it's immediately activated, but that's not to say it's a bad card. I might sideline it though, because I am trying to keep the number of artifacts we use to a minimum, right? Because again, we are going to use Collector Roof, we are going to use Null Rod. I can tell you that right off the bat. Yeah, but Pure is okay. Pure is okay. Okay, so we've got a lot of list here now, and I think we've added all the potential ramp we want. Let's just go ahead and actually take a look at this list as we're moving along. I might put in PETA. Maybe we can manually assemble that. Man, no. That's tricky. Again, I'm thinking of Necrotic Ooze. I'm like, man, what if you just PETA, and then you're like, you just take your turn to drop Necrotic Ooze and pass, and then you've dumped the combo in your graveyard, and you just pop off turn, right? You can just go off turn. It's just not good enough, though, because again, you're now half a list short, and you need to hit the Phyrexian Devourer threshold to kill everybody. It's tricky. So we've got a lot of creatures. I'm thinking Ornn Frostfang is definitely usable. All of our little elves are going to help with this. Ornn Frostfang, if you've never seen it, I always advocate for this card. It's excellent. The list is shaping up a little bit. I think we're still missing some crucial elements. Let me know if I'm missing anything that really stands out for you. Do you have Mox Diamond and Chrome Mox in already? No, I do not. So with fast mana, I think for a lot of lists and a lot of builders, there's a list of things you generally copy and paste into decks. And Mox Diamond and Chrome Mox are one of the ones that I find subjective. I think that Chrome Mox is tricky because oftentimes, especially if you run a list that lacks card draw, losing the card is really damning. But we're also at a relatively low land count, and again, I'm not sure we're sticking at 31. Mox Diamond to get a turn 1 Belbe out, is that really valuable? The way I see myself sequencing this, so I generally don't add in the Gemstone Caverns, the fast mana you typically see, unless getting that creature out is part of your A game, right? And it need be out early, like Tiny Bones. Like getting a turn 1 Tiny Bones is really crucial. Getting a turn 1 or turn 2 Savala, really crucial. Yeah, I'm going to add all the fast mana for that. But if the way I want to sequence my plays, technically, is by dropping a Mardu Shadow Spear into Belbe, then having the turn 1 Belbe isn't a huge deal. And yes, you can use that mana for something else, potentially dropping Stacks pieces. I'm gonna add the Peer into the Abyss now, and I'm also gonna add a Chrome Mox and Mox Diamond because I do think that they are usable here. I just want to put out the fact that they're not always usable. They're not always usable. Okay, so we're at 70 cards with that. Chrome Mox is good. I'm sorry, just had a brain fart there. Mox Diamond. Did I sidelined the Mox Amber, right? Okay. I'm going to take a second to read over the comments because I feel like I've been neglecting you. Yes, you know what? Yes, I'm sorry. I was chatting with someone on the Fiend Artisan. I love Fiend Artisan. I absolutely love Fiend Artisan. And I play it in Justin, who's featured on the show. He has a combo cube that has Fiend Artisan, and I love this card. Yes, we're using it. It's a X in the, we'll look over it in a second, but it's a creature tutor that's very similar to like a Fauna Shaman, but better. And speaking of, survival of the fittest, yes, right? Fauna Shaman, no. Survival's good because we are definitely going to lean towards a reanimate strategy for getting out Machias or Triskelion. So having survival of the fittest, let's just say I have Machias in my hand and the reanimate, right? I can use survival of the fittest to drop Machias, get the Triskelion from my list. This is post-combat main phase. I have the generic to just drop Triskelion, and then I can cast reanimate on Machias, right? So that's a really good setup for this. And, you know, obviously with that line of play, we need our reanimate. Loving these thoughts. I'm going to go over, as I stated, the comment section. I'm sure I missed a tutor or two or something that would be of benefit. Hey, Trent. Yes, I think crop rotation is a huge must. Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you on crop. If you run a list that has green, always use crop rotation, particularly if you have utility lands that are valuable to you. And even if it's just crop rotating your dual land for your basic when you see a Blood Moon on the stack. You know, you don't want to get cut out of the game. And crop rotation really helps with your mana fixing, but it also gives you those utilities. I love it. No Priest of Titania with all your... Priest of Titania is interesting. And I generally only use Priest of Titania if she acts as a combo piece. Look, having all the mana in the world is fine. Doing something with that mana is more important. So with Priest and Belbe, because again, she's a zombie elf, you do generate 2 green, right? So that is pretty high functioning. We can make an excuse for her to be in this list, but we are generating a lot of generic, and a lot of our spells only require so many pips of mana to really pop off. So we're probably good with just relying on Belbe and the pulse trackers of the world to give us the requisite mana to do the things we want. That's arguably better than dropping in Priest. And also Priest happens to be 2 CMC. On my turn 2, I think I'm going to want to drop Belbe. But we can sideline her. I mean, like, I don't hate the idea, you know. I agree. I don't value Priest highly. I know a lot of people play Priest in any list that has the requisite amount of elves. But I don't really see her as that valuable. Let's see here. No, I haven't. So I haven't gotten to any stacks pieces or hate bears yet. And that's something I wanted to talk to you all about. So there are definitely some stacks pieces I want to run in this list. I want to go over potential uses for real like hard lock and shutout pieces. If we can sort of lean this strategy towards really mucking up the board. Because we have all this generic to spend. I'm trying to think of what kind of blowout or stacks piece cards we can land. This is a tough one. Possessed Portal. So if a player would draw a card, that player skips that draw instead. At the beginning of each end step, each player sacrifices a permanent unless they discard a card. So obviously this is really hateful. You can shut down a game heavily with this. And there are combo cards with it. I don't think they're necessarily in Golgari. You could use something like the Sundial of the Infinite to end your turn with this trigger on the stack so you don't have to sack a permanent, right? We can also go with like smokestacks. For something like smokestacks, you'd probably want token generators so that you're not losing permanents that are of value to you if we want to go that route. You really like those? No, you know what's funny? Sire of Insanity is I've actually lost to a Possessed Portal list, and it really, it was torture. It was definitely torture. Worse than Sire of Insanity. At least you get, you know, plays. But Possessed Portal is a real shutout. No, it doesn't feel good. However, it's certainly a potential card for this list if we want to go that route with some hard stacks. Yeah, Underrealm Lich. You can look at that. If we're gonna humor this idea of going a Possessed Portal route, because we can very easily drop that, and our Fiend Artisan can get the Underrealm Lich. I think I know which card this is, but I do want to get up on the screen for everyone else. Yes, Necropotence, Dark Confidant, Dark Tutelage, right? We're using those already. And you know, I don't have Necropotence in here yet. With Necropotence, there are lists that use it to win the game, and there are lists that use it for value. This is a list that will use it for value. I think if you just go up to your starting hand, that's good. Obviously, if you want to hand sculpt and go beyond that, you should, especially if you're in a good position. Along with that, we do need to add Dark Ritual, though. And maybe Cabal Ritual. But I will sideline this one. Right. But we'll consider that. Necropotence is just good value. Underrealm Lich, though. Let's just go humor the Possessed Portal idea for a second. For 3 generic and Golgari, Zombie Elf Shaman. Oh my god, it's Belbe's brother. Is it a dude? It's a dude. If you draw a card, instead look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put 1 into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. This is actually really interesting synergy with a Necrotic Ooze. Sylvan Tutor. See, now I'm not going to reliably go for Underrealm Lich, but this is an excuse to use Natural Order, right? You Natural Order your Underrealm Lich. I'm talking myself into it. Pay 4 life. Underrealm Lich gains indestructible until the end of turn. Tap it. Okay. So, Dosen, City of Solitude, no. I wouldn't recommend them. I might recommend in this particular list, if we're trying to pop off maybe the... This might be better than Dosen or the City of Solitude, which means players can't cast spells on your turn. During each player's turn, each other player Player spells cost 3 more to play. So why do I like Defense Grid as opposed to City of Solitude? Something like City of Solitude or Dose in the Falling Leaves is because we know that we're netting a lot of generic, and I'm going to lean heavily on Belbe's effect to generate generic. I think it'd be best to just drop this before comboing out. And again, if like our combo is playing Tooth and Nail, they need to stop the Defense Grid before it lands, or they're likely screwed. It's doubtful that they're going to have the mana to pay for that tax on top of trying to stop me, right? We'll see. They might. Lich with Sylvan Library is dope. Do y'all like Underrealm Lich? Is this like a real thing? I could do that. We can do that. I mean, it's, again, something in natural order. Now, let's just start adding those stacked pieces in now. I do like Defense Grid here. I'm actually going to drop that in the list right now. If it stays, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged shield, Defense Grid. It can really screw you over if you don't win right then and there. Yes, let's go ahead and add those stacks pieces now. So we've got Rude Maze, we talked about already. We're going to get Collector Oof foremost, Null Rod. This may be a little too much redundancy, and we might remove one over the other, but mind you, Null Rod is easier to cast in this list. We can get by with the Thorn of Amethyst, right? Because our creatures our combos are creature combos, but mind you, we're probably going to reliably get those creatures out with instant or sorcery tutored to field effects. So we might as well go with a Sphere of Resistance if we're going to do that. And maybe even a Trini Sphere in here. Because once we've assembled like our low end, and we'll look at our curve in a second. If we're affecting too much of our low end, then Trini Sphere is bad. But we know that a lot of our removal pieces in Golgari, you know, the Assassin's Trophies, the Abrupt Decays, there are 2. So spending 1 more for that isn't the end of the world, and Trini Sphere stops Storm and Turbo List in their tracks. And then, of course, you know, the other mid-range list, it's going to stunt them too. But we're more worried about stopping the faster decks at the table when we play mid-range, and then we concern ourselves with whatever someone else might have for us. And I do like Damping Sphere here. I do and I don't. Damping Sphere is tricky because it stops Stormlist exclusively, but it also hinders our Gaia's Cradle and anything that's tapping for more mana. We'll sideline the Damping Sphere. Let me go ahead and save this for now. Manglehorn's already in. Would they shut off Trike? I think if someone knew that I was playing for Makai's and Triskelion, and they wanted to add a Curse Totem to stop me, cool. I mean, look, the meta is definitely dominated by far easier combos to accomplish. You know, we're talking 3 CMC to conclude a game as opposed to 12, you know? We're really working our butts off to accomplish this. Again, so as I mentioned off the beginning of this, and I was mentioning in chat, whether or not this actually makes the cut, we'll see with some testing and some gameplay. And again, as I always do, I'd love to play with our Patreon members at the end of this. If you guys are available, we can definitely throw down and see what this list looks like. I might even, if we do assemble and try this list out, we can go ahead and I'll just stream it on the Discord maybe, like screen share, and folks can watch. We'll see. I also think that alongside these streams, provided the quality of this is decent, we can go ahead and stream games as well, and that would be a fun way for everyone to see the list we test. And we can talk about that after the fact as well. But let's go ahead and look over more of our stacks pieces for now, though. We're definitely not there. But I know that we've mentioned this already, Assassin's Trophy. Like, we want our Assassin's Trophy, we want our Abrupt Decay. We want our Deadly Rollick for creatures. We might use, and this seems like an odd inclusion to just immediately shoot for, but Caustic Caterpillar. Caustic Caterpillar is going to come in handy here. It's not difficult to get Caustic Caterpillar off, right? What's nice about this is that it's very easy setup with Green Sun Zenith, and then obviously if someone is stunting us, we have this as onboard removal. right? But again, if someone is using Curse Totem, which is our shutdown for our combo, then this isn't very good. I'm going to add that for now. I like Caustic a lot. I think it's a good alternative to having simply your Manglehorn. Some other things we want are the Noxious Revival, right? To regain any combo pieces or tutors we might have in our grave. Eternal Witness is always a must in green. Always a must. It seems odd, but yeah, you always run it. No watch on the wrist right now. I mean, I could put one on. I don't know why I'm not wearing a watch today. It's just, my watch is in my bedroom. That's why I'm not wearing it. Toxic Deluge. Yeah, I'll put in Toxic. I mean, this really stubs our own toe with what, you know, we're accumulating on our board. But if things get out of hand, yeah, obviously tutoring for Toxic Deluge is rather important. Nature's Claim. So there's an internal debate over Nature's Claim and Natural State for me. Nature's Claim, you all know it. It's instant speed, 1 green. You remove an artifact or enchantment that opponent gains for life, right? Something like that. Natural State is the alternative, and it's instant speed, 1 green. Destroy target artifact or enchantment with a converted mana cost of 3 or less. So we need to think about what is potentially going to be a win con for our opponents or what is potentially stunting us. And if that is 4 CMC or higher, maybe we want Nature's Claim. But if it's 3 CMC and under, we're going to want Natural State. Because I got to tell you, giving an opponent health is more important than ever, right? With the frequency of ad nauseum, at least with my meta, giving someone that slight amount of health is bad. It's never a good thing. So, you know, Curse Totem, again, that's sort of the big threat for us. Yes, this hits Curse Totem. That's only stopping our combo necessarily, but it also stops all of our dorks. This is going to hit the Underworld Breach. They're probably going to try to pop off on top of that anyways. This hits an opposing Necropotence if they're not winning with the Necropotence. And this is going to hit a Rest in Peace. This is going to hit a lot of things. It's not going to hit the Ley Line of the Void, which is 4 CMC. But the frequency of that hitting the board is very far and few between. I think we can probably rely on Natural State to do the work for us. I'll start there. Obviously, if you feel like Nature's Claim is better for your meta, then, you know, alternate. If you're going to follow this list at all, alternate those two. Alternate those two. So we'll save out. Let's see what the deck looks like for now. Right? We'll see if we got all the tutors we need at everything else. Was there the addition of Beast Within? Oh, you know what? The Veils. You're so right. The Veils. I don't have Beast Within in here yet. Golgari's in a unique position in that it has really good permanent removal that it doesn't necessarily need Beast Within. I generally rely on Beast Within or Generous Gift for those monocolored lists. The mono white, the mono green, they're very good there. But specifically here, we could probably avoid them for now. If we find we need more removal though, yes, we'll add in the Veil, or not the Veils. We're adding Veils now. We'll add in the Beast Within. But Veil of Summer, yes, obviously. And then Autumn's Veil. Right. I think that's probably all we need so far as evasion is concerned. I mean, there's maybe an excuse for something like a Void Fate. Counter target instant or aura spell that targets a permanent you control, right? There's maybe an excuse for that. If you're going to get, you know, if your Triskelion, your Machias in particular is going to get removed, you can stop that. We'll see. I think that we're going to want to add some more stacks pieces to effectively hinder anyone from doing that instead. So I think both the Veils is probably enough for us right now. Dismember's okay. Dismember's okay. Maybe we run it. I think there's probably better creature removal though, and we'll look over that. Opposition agents in. Heroic Intervention to protect our permanents. That's an interesting choice. In case you guys don't know what Heroic Intervention does, I'll leave it on the screen. But permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn, and it's a lowly 2 CMC, so this is quite good, particularly if we're trying to mount a menacing board state and we don't want people removing our stacks. This is very good. Generally, I would recommend this for a Staxier build. Proactive lists usually don't have the mana requisite to cast this. Like Savala, Savala's got just enough to do the dance of card draw / untapping / that you really need to rely on the 1 CMC effects to give you the evasion or protection. This is usually better for a list that has a board state you really care about, even if it's only protecting 1 or 2 things in that instance. So maybe here, right? Winter Orb's unique. If a majority of our list was generic based, I would say yeah, for sure. But I think the issue with Winter Orb is that we don't... Here's what I'll say over Winter Orb. Not Sphere of Resistance. Dang it. What is the artifact that means you can't untap more than 2 permanents? Untap more. It's a sphere of some sort. Static Orb. Static Orb. Look, we're making so much generic, I think we can drop Static Orb, and that really slows someone down. It does, again, this is another one of those double-edged swords, right? So, like, if there is that proactive list that's only looking to drop the dockside anyways, and they dockside for 7, they probably have the requisite to go off on their turn, right? So Static Orb is hindering opponents that might also be capable of stopping that player. And generally speaking, I'm talking about blue decks, and we're in Golgari. We don't have countermeasures or any form of interaction like that. So Static Orb is tricky. 2 generic for Winter Orb, right? This was a suggestion just a second ago. As long as Winter Orb is untapped, players can't untap more than 1 land during their untap step. And this is cool for us because we generate gobs of mana. What do y'all think about Winter Orb? Which of the orbs would you recommend for this list as an additional stacks piece, right? Let's start there. What do you all think is the best? I like Static Orb here, still. I don't know if it's great, but I do like it here. I'm sorry, someone mentioned the Veils, and let me go back and look over this, because there were some good suggestions. There's some really good suggestions. Let me see here. Return to Nature might be playable. Did the Deadly Rollick have not done the Force of Vigor? Sorry if that on the mic just was menacing, by the way. I don't have a pop filter on this, so a large gust of wind are probably horrible on your ears. Sorry about that. I'm not seeing it again. Force of Vigor is something I'm going to avoid for now. Winter Orb is best if you have a way to tap it. Yeah, we're not playing Urza, but it's still okay. I honestly think Tangle Wire might be better, but like, again, you really want alternative cards to tap out, right? So we've got, oh yeah, I left Bontu's Monument in here. What the hell? Again, Bontu's is really not bad. I mean, like, if we have to recast Belbe, at least when we do so, we get the trigger off Bontu's Monument, right? And then we're able to go off with something else. So a lot of our generic spells really don't do too much for us. I think we have a decent enough removal suite. I think we're obviously going to want to add more here. Before we close this one out, I think we're going to have to take a hard look at payoffs, right? And someone mentioned Exsanguinate earlier. I think that's how you spell Exsanguinate. Yeah. Each opponent loses X life. You gain X life. Equal to the life lost this way, right? So that's okay. We're not really making infinite mana, so this isn't like a real outlet for us. This is just for the gobs of mana we might potentially make between a Gaia's Cradle and Belbe mana, obviously. It's not bad. I think the first thing I want to do is just look over very quickly any sort of outlets or cards that have X in the cost, and then we'll look at X in the text box. Potentially find something there for us. Gigantha Companion. Never. Who would be foolish enough to do that? I'd rather run Torment over Exsanguinate. Yeah, I agree with you. We're talking about the this is the card, if I'm not mistaken, that Sylvan is suggesting. Thank you, Wesley. GG's. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Torment of Hailfire. I agree. I think that this is a better payoff than Exsanguinate because it hits on multiple levels, right? So we'll just go over this as a potential payoff. Someone was mentioning that it wouldn't be bad to add Boseiju, who shelters all, which is the land that makes it so your next spell is uncounterable, or rather, if you put the mana into a spell, that spell becomes uncounterable. I can agree with that if if some of our payoffs are instants or sorceries, right? So if we wind up using 2 or 3, maybe we'll look at adding Boseiju. If it was just Torment of Hailfire, no. I mean, this is more of like an offhanded thing to hopefully do the job. There we go. I saw that even. The screen just flickered out. Sorry about that. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So that's really good. You know what? Let's just drop Torment of Hailfire in here for now. Let's drop it in here for now. Because if we can get that to pop off early, what is anyone going to do to stop that if we really get that to go off early? Right? Like a turn 3 Torment of Hailfire. That'd be pretty menacing. I'm going over everyone else's thoughts here. Okay. So let's go back to what we were doing. Is there a case for Agadim's Awakening and or the Timber Serpentine Woods? Serpentine Ridge? These are the MDFCs. On the backs of them are lands. We can return creatures from our graveyard. You know, the thing is, Agadim's Awakening might actually be valuable. Might actually be valid. So return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that have each have a different converted mana cost of X or less. This is really good, especially if a blowout occurs, and even if it's our own Toxic Deluge, right? We buried alive our combo pieces prior. Mind you, because Trisket and Mike have the same casting costs, we're only going to get one of them out at a time. There's an excuse for your Protean Hulk build with your Phyrexian Delver, right? Because it's a 5-drop. I think Agadim's Awakening is probably good for this list, and I need to look at our mana here. If we're leaning more towards black spells, or we have more black pips in our spells, we might want Agadim's Awakening, just because it's a swamp, right? So let me just go ahead and add that now. But while we're looking at these payoffs, I'm actually going to start with same way we organized the last list. We're going to just start with the lowest CMC first. And if you ever wanted to convert your mana, again, things like Astral Cornucopia, they could be playable. I'm just going to go over everyone's questions now. Give me 1 second. Do we have Thorns of Amethyst yet? No, but I talked about it. I want more taxes. I put in Sphere of Resistance because honestly, it's better. Hurricane? Maybe. Living Death? Okay, so Chalice of the Void. We're making generic mana. Do we want to fill up a Chalice of the Void and make spells, make it so that spells get countered? Probably not. Make it so that a creature can't attack or block this turn. That's rather good with our Pulse Trackers of the world, right? To make sure that they can get in on someone. But probably not good enough. I think we're ultimately going to have at least someone. And if we need to have that creature fall on its own sword to give us the 6 generic, then that's good. There's also one other thing before we continue here I want to talk about, and that's potentially bouncing or removing Belbe from our own board. There are going to be circumstances where you don't want to give people the mana. So having something like a Village Rites in the list would be good. Right? As additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, instant speed. I'm not even going to read off the fact that draws you 2 cards. All I'm saying is Belbe is tricky. She is certainly providing too much value for your opponents in certain circumstances. So I do want to look over some effects as additional cost, specifically instant speed, or not sack outlets, but cards that sacrifice creatures for some effect, which is a sack outlet. But you can see what I'm getting at. Maybe we do need to, crack the whip on Belbe at some point, get her off the board, and then use our Astral Cornucopias or use our Everflowing Chalices to bring her back out, right? We'll look at that. I think Everflowing Chalice has maybe has a better argument for it to do the mana conversion, but maybe not. Wound Reflection, Viscera Seer. No Viscera Seer. I would say Viscera Seer or Carrion Feeder are more there for the combo potential than anything. Now, and speaking of combo potential, do we add Walking Ballista as a backup to Triskelion? Pop question for you. Do you add Walking Ballista as a backup for Triskelion? It's not truly a backup, right? Walking Ballista enters with 1/1/1 counter and happens to be a 1/1 rather when you have Machias out. So yes, you can add it, yeah. Speaking of Tevesh Svat, we like Walking Ballista as an outlet. So we do need a way to sacrifice it, mind you, to go infinite, right? We do need a way to sack it. Tevesh is something I actually spoke on with Rebel the other night. After playing with Rebel, she was playing a Tevesh / I'm thinking Rograk because we were discussing Rograk. What was your other partner? What was your other partner? I'm just drawing a blank here. But we were talking about Tevesh last night. We can add Tevesh into this list because Tevesh is 4 generic and 1 black. Right? Draw 2 cards when you sacrifice a creature, makes rolls. This is a beast, by the way. At any table. Limited, constructed. Tevesh is just stupid. Yeah, we want Tevesh. I think we do want Tevesh because it's very easy to cast in this list. And it was a consideration. I think that we're definitely going to add it. It could get sideboarded. Who knows? But yes, it's decent card draw, and we always need more of that. Do we add Walking Ballista? It sounds like enough people want Walking Ballista. Now, I could understand Brandon's argument here, though. What would you gain by sacking creatures? Nothing really. I mean, we don't really have great creatures to sacrifice outside of combo. So why would I want to use Viscera Seer outside of combo to scry one? It does feel a little lackluster. I agree there. I think for now, I'm going to sideline the Walking Ballista, provided we do go for a line of play that incorporates sack outlets, then yeah, Walking Ballista has a use case. However, I will state that we talked about it earlier as a potential combo outside of the Necrotic Ooze line, outside of the Machias line, adding in Protean Hulk to get the job done. I don't think that's a bad idea. I really don't think that's a bad idea because it's very easy to accomplish here, right? We're making a lot of mana with Belbe if our plan works out. So maybe it would make sense to go with the Protean Hulk line, and then we would have an excuse for sack outlets. Machias, if you're just jumping in now, yes. Machias will be the main win con here. Let's just go ahead. I'm going to take a gander at some of these cards here. Obviously, Green Sun Zenith is already in the list. Hurricane was mentioned. Yes, I get that Hurricane would damage players and kill flyers. We don't have any flyers. Birds of Paradise? There's maybe an excuse for Hurricane. Maybe one excuse for Hurricane. We can really mind twist the shit out of someone. How about that? We're not going to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my Streamlabs really quick. Now, I've added in something to help with the flickering. I do apologize if the screen here is flickering. Again, if you're just jumping in and it happens to be flickering, just happens to be an issue with Streamlabs on Mac right now. and there isn't really a good workaround, but it looks good right now. I might extend this live stream to about 4:30, in case you're wondering. I do want to close this out with a nice ribbon on top of it, and I'm not quite certain we're there yet with payoffs, but I do want to provide that for you all before we end this. So hang tight for that. Again, I'm just looking over right now effects with X in the casting cost. This is precisely what I do when I go about building any list of mine. So this is an interesting way to damage out the board, almost like your Toxic Deluge, but in creatures with horsemanship, this reminds me of, what is the red spell? Rollick, something along those lines. There's a red spell that functions similarly to Borrowing the East Wind. Just an excuse to play this card would be sick, but I don't think Belbe needs that. Ten or less, all creatures from graveyard to the battlefield. Huh. Destroy up to 3 target creatures with toughness. You know, can we say there's an excuse for Finale of Eternity in this list? It's interesting creature removal, and it's pretty cool recursion. You do need to hit 10. I mean, that's really it. I feel like that's asking for a lot, but I haven't tested this, so maybe we actually get there. I genuinely don't think it's worth it. I mean, that's very much like a late game finisher, if a finisher at all. And do mind you, those creatures aren't going to be valid for combat, as was mentioned with Finale of Devastation. Again, oh, you know what would be great actually? Genesis Wave, much like Gen Hydra over here. Right? That wouldn't be bad. It's not a finisher, just value. But if you don't know what Genesis Wave is, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards converted mana cost of X or less from them onto the battlefield, then put all revealed cards this way that weren't put onto the battlefield into your graveyard. Again, that's not so bad. Like if you miss the mark, X isn't 6, and you happen to bury your Triskelion, that's okay. Right? At least you know where it is. Hopefully no one drops a Rest in Peace. That wouldn't be bad. Maybe there's an excuse for Gen Wave here too. I am feeling Gen Wave. Yeah, you do need to drop 3 green for it still. But 6 is the magic number, and Belbe makes 6, right? So that's... I'll add the Gen Wave just because that's really good value. I feel like it's probably going to soak a counter. Someone's mana drain, but we might as well throw that in there. For now. Mind you, I'm not sure we're keeping that. You know what? Uncage the Menagerie is a creature tutor that we didn't add. I don't think there's a good excuse for it here, although it is something I really savor in a Shaya. Same with Weird Harvest. Again, avoidable. We might want more reanimate effects. So we'll probably add like an Animate Dead or a Dance of the Dead, right? Because it is vital that we have those creatures stick, we get them back, right? We just added Gen Wave. Destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost of X or less. That's pretty dope. But I'm not feeling it for this list. Again, we want to keep our own board state up, right? And that'll do it for X spells. Or rather, spells with X in the cost, at least. Now we want to look for spells with X in the body and see what we can find here. Hopefully something of value. And we're nearly closing out this list at this moment. We're at 95 cards. Holding. Please wait. What enablers do we have for Belbe? We can look at them. We're 99 cards now with 31 lands, and let's go ahead and look at the list so far. And I'm actually going to go for the live edit now. While that's loading, let me just go ahead and take a gander at some of our spells that have X in the body. While Blasting Station isn't a bad utility land for the list, I honestly don't think so. Candelabra of Tawnos, if we were on the Winter Orb, maybe. Helix Pinnacle. I mean, if you managed to win with Helix Pinnacle because of Belbe, congratulations. Yes, we have Fiend Artisan. If you're coming in late, we already have Fiend Artisan. Yes, it's good. Vivian's Arcbow, I wish it was better. I'm going to try to quickly scroll through these. None of these are feeling right for the list, sadly. Again, this is just X in the body. I'm doing the bare minimum for these searches. Again, I don't want to miss anything in particular. I think that we are past the point of no return here with the value. There's really going to be no return. Huh. Well. Okay. Geth, Lord of the Vault. It's really cute. Would you run Goryo's Vengeance now? Obviously, we can plug a lot of mana into this. It's only 1 black to do, and we can bring back an artifact or creature with converted mana cost X from an opponent's graveyard. That's not beneficial to us. Unless it's like a stacks piece. No. No, we're not going that route. Okay, let's just take a gander at the list now. I'm going to go over to live edit for this. Let's see what we have. Again, I believe, again, we're up to 99 cards. And of course, I'll make this list public once it's complete over on Tapped Out. And again, I'd like to have this complete by the end of this video. So we are going to extend this just a little bit. These lists always take a little while to conclude. But so far as artifacts are concerned, we have Bontu's Monument, Trinisphere, Defense Grid, Null Rod, Sphere of Resistance, Soul Ring, Chrome Mox, Monocrypt, and Mox Diamond. I think these all work for the list. The Null Rod is shutting down 4 cards, which is good, right? That's not bad. Same thing with our Collector Oof. Bontu's Monument right now, this is definitely on the maybe board. Definitely on the maybe board. So as I've mentioned off the top, we're going to try for Mike and Trike, right? So they're right at the top of the list here. We have Ornn Frostfang for the draw potential. Very easy to cheat out with the mana gain. We have Occam Adversary for draw as well. Hopefully we can get the cost reduction on that. It's looking like the Bontu's Monument is not that hot for this list, so I'm just going to go ahead and side that now. Yes, Damping Sphere is a potential add-on so far as stacks pieces are concerned, and I genuinely think we need more stacks pieces. But I could be wrong. Let's just take a gander. Eternal Witness for the recursion or just retrieval, whatever you want to call that. Manglehorn is excellent against the current meta. I love this card. I highly recommend it. Belbe, obviously, we know what she does. Dark Confidant for the card put into hand effect. Fiend Artisan is fantastic. This is going to be great for whipping out our combo cards. Mind you, Fiend Artisan only works at sorcery speed. Right, so it is stunted in that way. However, for sacrificing another creature, your Llanowar Elves, to get your mic out, and again, your Llanowar Elves can tap to pay this, and you use Belbe's effect to pull mic out. This is a great way to conclude the combo. I really do think that leaning towards, I hate saying it, man, we do need other payoffs, and just a Torment of Hellfire is not enough, right? So I feel like infinite lines that we should go for might rely on Necrotic Ooze as well, and then adding in Walking Ballista. We'll see. Ward of Bones. You know what? That's a fun one. Let's look that up now, because this is a really great card if you don't know what Ward of Bones is. And I think it's 6 CMC exactly. Yep. Each opponent who controls more creatures than you can't cast creature spells. The same is true for artifacts and enchantments. Each opponent who controls more lands than you can't play lands. Well, you know what? If I'm in a spot where I'm generating a lot of mana off Belbe, imagine dropping this turn 2, right? Imagine dropping this turn 2. So we do our Pulse Tracker, Turn 2 Belbe, swing of the Pulse Tracker, drop Ward of Bones. If I wasn't on the play, then whomever is going after me to drop their third land is going to be so upset because they can't. Ward of Bones might actually be good. It is at the very top end of our mana gain, and it's really going to rely on a solid opening hand. But if you can drop an early Ward of Bones, genuinely, that is gas. I agree. This is something I was thinking about prior. I did not put. Let's just go ahead and add Ward of Bones really quickly. I do think it makes sense for the list. Give me 1 second. Leave the site. What are you talking about? Oh. Yeah, we'll save. Yeah, let's add Ward of Bones really quick and then take a gander at the list from here on out to see what we can accomplish with it. I do like Ward a lot. How can I forget God Pharaoh's statue for stacks? I'll look at it. Yes, the Null Rod hits Trike. You're absolutely right. We might need to remove the Null Rod. And then, let's see here, reduction. Yeah, that sucks. We really can't, if we are manipulating a Trike, we really can't use the Collector Oof and the Null Rod. Side note, Belbe myself. Okay. God Pharaoh, fine. I'll humor this. You're right, though. We don't have a reliable way to remove, I'm spelling Pharaoh wrong, I'm certain. We don't have a reliable way, is that, oh, Jesus Christ. God Fa. Spells your opponent's control cost 2 more to cast. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. Well, this bottom half doesn't really matter, but it's incremental damage still, so that's nice. There's spells costing 2 more to cast. I think I'd rather rely... Man, I mean, well, look, we're really relying on plan A to go right, for God Pharaoh's statue. But in the same way, Ward of Bones. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to add the Ward of Bones. We're going to add the God Pharaoh statue. I agree, it makes sense. I'm not over the moon about it. But we're also going to sideline, unfortunately. Again, we don't have a good way. And you know what's funny? I haven't done the Trisket line in so long, but you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, Triskelion is impeded by Collector Oof and Null Rod. Now, what's interesting is that Root Maze is still really valid for the list, so we're going to keep that. Obviously. Did I drop the Ward of Bones in yet? I think that's the first thing I did. Okay, let's stop here and look over the list in live view again and see where we're at. I don't mind this. I really don't mind this. I get it. There are some other 6 drops that are 6 generic that we can look over. And we might even want to just take a look at all the generic costed cards we can potentially use for value. Obviously, again, we're relying on a lot of things going right for us, but I would probably recommend you mulligan to the hand to where you do have these big plays lined up for you. But what's also nice about this, and what's encouraging me more and more into the Phyrexian Devourer line with this particular build with Necrotic Ooze, is the simple fact that we are adding in large spells, high CMC spells. And this might actually, like God Pharaoh's statue off the top with Necrotic Ooze for 6 +1/+1 counters is actually a really big deal, right? It's actually a really big deal. So we might do that. The Dread Return line, let me just go over this. If my opponents have more resources than me, yeah, Ward of Bones is really bad. Probably at most, it's going to get discarded. Because the cost reduction, let's see here. I don't know if we have room for both Thorn of Amethyst and Sphere of Resistance, and to be perfectly honest with you, Sphere of Resistance is the better between the two. I'm not looking to hard cast my creature combos, and to be honest, again, we're making the generic to be able to accomplish just casting the creatures anyways, so I'd rather just have the across the board tax with Sphere of Resistance. I don't know how stacksy we're going. We're adding more stacks as we go along. I do think that we need to look for the bigger payoff stacks pieces. Again, God Pharaoh statue, I'm not horribly high on. Spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast is like a huge deal. I definitely agree on that. You do need things to go right. But again, as we are now, what we're looking for in our starting hand, not necessarily dorks, but the Vicious Conquistador, the Thornbow Archer, the Pulse Tracker, the Night Market Lookout, the Mardu Shadow Sphere, our Deathrite Shaman, right? These are the things that are going to help us ping each opponent simultaneously, and then on top of that, give us the 6 generic to drop some bombs. And those bombs right now are looking like Ward of Bones, the Trini Sphere, you know, manipulating the mana we get, the excess mana we get to play out a really big turn. Now, mind you, yes, Ward of Bones is predicated on what your board state looks like. And if someone's already established a board much better than yours, then you're probably going to avoid dropping Ward of Bones because you don't want to stunt your opponents from potentially, you know, stopping that player from popping off as well. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword. We'll just see how it treats us first, right? So I think creature-wise, we're in a good spot. Yes, we can add Thord of Amethyst as an additional tax. And we might just do that. Mind you, we are at 98 cards, and we're going to go ahead and just take a second to cut some, right? I think right now, all of our creatures look really good. If I'm missing any creatures that you think are fantastic, or some more stablemates for Vicious Conquistador, you know, let me know. Like more 1-drops that hit everyone simultaneously. I think I named off 5 there, but if there are more, let me know. Carpet of Flowers, yeah, we're going to run it. And Root Maze, yeah, we're going to run it. Sanctum Stonefangs seems like a shoe-in. Survival of the Fittest, obviously. Sylvan Library, yes. Dark Tutelage is very easy to pop off. Necropotence is a, you know, Dark Tutelage gets worse the more we add high CMC cards. I'll side it for now. Maybe, rather. Retreat, yes. Okay, so Retreat to Hagra, it does the thing we want, and I think we're going to keep it for that alone. Just going over everyone's comments here. Mindblade Render isn't bad. Especially if you face Najila often. You know, she's giving you the warriors to get the draw. Even if you're not doing the attacking yourself. Deadly Rollick, Court of Calling, Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy, Autumn's Veil, Crop Rotation, Dark Ritual, Entomb, Natural State, Noxious Revival, Vampiric Tutor, Veil of Summer, Worldly Tutor. These are okay. We could probably run some more removal, and this is probably something I'll modify off stream. Finding that balance is a little difficult between the pool of cards, generally speaking, for removal is shared with stacks pieces, right? And you do want to make sure there's a proper balance between all of them. Tavesh Svad is in the list for now. It is a very good Planeswalker to drop. I think we can probably keep this here for the interim. I'm not sure it sticks or not. And lastly, we have our sorceries. Got some big spells here. We've got Peer into the Abyss, Tooth and Nail, Agadeem's Awakening, Eldritch Evolution, Genesis Wave, Toxic Deluge, Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Intent, Finale of Devastation, Torment of Hellfire. I'm iffy on that. Green Sun Zenith, Imperial Seal, and Reanimate. So this looks good. I think PETA is fine. Are we really manually assembling much? Are we going to amass a huge hand and do nothing? That's what I'm worried about. Yes, we can cast it very easily, but is it helping us? I'm not entirely sure it is. So I am going to maybe board this for a second. Agadeem's Awakening is fine. You know what I want to do? I actually really do want to go with the Necrotic Ooze route. And we'll see where we're at with that. So it's really going to be adding 3 cards. We're going to add Buried Alive, Necrotic Ooze, and the Phyrexian Devourer. And I'm going to go over the comments as we wait. Steel Hellkite seems kind of cute. Yeah. I have a copy of Steel Hellkite. I never use it. I've never found there's been a great list for it, at least among my builds. It is a little slow. Necrotic Ooze, Buried Alive. Now, with this comes the need for more reanimation spells, all right? So let's go ahead and take a gander at what we might use. Now, there's actually an interesting one that works at instant speed that we actually looked at. Something Lunge. Postmortem Lunge. This is not the one. This is not the way. Return creature. Nope. Nope. Life Death is good. Life Death is good. I'm not high on Necromancy here. Dread Return. Right? I like what you're saying with Dread Return. Simply because now Dread, I think some people were commenting on the fact that we can establish a mana base. We can establish a mana base where Hermit Druid reliably puts out Dread Return, and then we go Dread Return into return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So conceptually, you could like set up the combo by doing a Hermit Druid, dump everything in the grave, and then use Dread Return to pull back what? I mean, you would get, if you had a way to reanimate Triskelion, you would get Machias. If you're going for Necrotic Ooze, you've lost your library for Phyrexian Devourer. It's a little tricky and a little slow. Hermit Druid's very slow. Dread is great with the useless dorks. I agree. It's not hard to cast either. But mind you, here, let me just find, okay. There's an instant speed reanimate spell. Did someone name it? That would work well in this list. Give me 1 second. So for this, I'm going to look up graveyard to battlefield. I think that this works with the list. Let me take a gander at it. You can do Corpse Dance with buyback, actually. There you go. Wake the Dead, only during an opponent's combat. Or only, yeah. Return X creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sacrifice those creatures at the beginning of the next end step. So what's interesting about Wake the Dead is it's affordable and no one's expecting it, right? However, unless that person's trying to combo on their own combat phase, it does mean that should people have open mana, they likely have open mana to thwart you. But what you could do is use this for 3 to bring back Necrotic Ooze, provided we have that line set up. I do think Corpse Dance, although normally not the best form of reanimation, is not bad here, only because it has the buyback. So we can attempt it again should we fail. And it's only 1 black to play, right? No Cryptolith Fragment. I don't know what that is. We can look at it, though. Goryo's Vengeance, yes, is interesting. Goryo's Vengeance does not work on both Machias and Necrotic Ooze if we're trying to play for both of those. Everyone's saying Necromancy. Isn't Necromancy 1 generic and double black? Not too high on that. I will put in Corpse Dance, though. Again, legitimately, it is valid that it has the buyback and we can pay the buyback easily. I will add an Animate Dead as well, and maybe stop there. Mind you, any tutors we have on the list that can find a form of reanimation also count as reanimation in my book. So I don't want to overdo it. Corpse seems better. I think Corpse seems better. I think Corpse seems better. And again, why that is because the buyback, right? If for some reason we're able to do this and the creature's removed, we still have the spell to cast again. You may pay an additional 2, we'll go ahead and read Corpse Dance specifically, make sure that this works out with what we're trying to do here. But we're making the generic to do this. Our combo isn't reliant on the combat step, but we do have a lot of creatures that care about pinging during combat step, so post-combat main phase, should we have gone off with the Pulse Tracker, then we have 6 generic, and we're able to cast this very reasonably. Return the top creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature gains haste until the end of the turn. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Tricky to do. You may pay additional 2 as you cast the spell. If you do, put this card into your hand as it resolves. Now, it would suck to fail on this, but if we are opening up the list to use both Necrotic Ooze and Machias, then we do have a replacement creature to still go infinite, still combo out. Right? And on that note, I think we might officially add Walking Ballista to the list, right? Because still, Walking Ballista is fine. If we just drop Walking Ballista with our gobs of generic, it's still fine. That doesn't really work. Let's do it this way. Corpse Dance might very well be taken out, though, mind you. No Dance of the Dead yet. Nope. I cut Bantu's Monument. Yep. Ballista is just good with mana. Yep, it is good mana sink. Shallow Grave is good. Shallow Grave is the same thing as Corpse Dance. It relies on the creature being on the top of your library. And what's beautiful about this and Corpse Dance is that they're both instant speed, right? So you can surprise someone with a win over top of someone trying to go off, right? Return top card. Mind you, this is bad in the instances where the creature on top of your graveyard isn't the combo creature. But we could also add that if we wanted. I see a Cryptolith fragment popping up. We'll go ahead and look at that. Again, we're coming near the end of this particular build, so enters the battlefield tapped. Okay. Add 1 mana. Each player loses 1 life. Yeah, that's actually very good. So yeah, we wound up cutting that search short because it was a little time consuming. But the other thing I wanted to do was research spells and effects that affect multiple players, right? So this is a search we didn't get to do. So thank you. Cryptolith, if there's anything else similar to this, Cryptolith Fragment, let me know, right? Genuinely, this is a good effect for the list. It's not very difficult to pump out either. Attacks each opponent loses 3 life. That's great. Yeah, I agree with you. And the art looks cool, and it's 27 cents. Yeah, we'll add that to the list. Cryptolith. But again, this is another search I would suggest you do for yourself. If you're using Belbe, I would just look up the keyword player and lose life or damage. I want to narrow that one down just a little bit more. We talked about Extort. Yes. I think that Extort is not as good as something like Cryptolith Fragment. Brandon is right. We are relying on Triskelion, Machias, and Necrotic Ooze, and now officially Walking Ballista. Cauldron Familiar is a one-shot, and we're not making food. We're not making food, so I'm not going to incorporate that. Let me just go back to Corpse Dance, because I want to make certain there's no kind of spell if you do. As the spell resolves. So if it is countered, then you're kind of... I'm contemplating whether we go for something more traditional. I feel like I run into more countermeasures than I do removal. And I don't want to have to rely on it being at the top of my library, or graveyard rather. Choose target creature card in graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. That doesn't work for us. We might wind up just putting in Dance of the Dead. Or Necromancy. I can see the merit to Necromancy. Hell, we'll just do that now. Let's do that now. I can see these being good. I have Animate Dead already, in case you're wondering. Dance of the Dead. And Necromancy. The more redundancy in this regard, the better. Because genuinely, we might just put out these creatures for value, these combo creatures for value, like the Walking Ballista we've already mentioned. Now again, Walking Ballista in this particular setup only truly combos with Necrotic Ooze once in the grave, and we can get it in the grave very simply by removing all the counters. So we're obviously over 100 cards. Let's cut and see where we're at. Our average CMC is 2.22. And necromancy is instant. Yeah, it can be played as an instant. The thing is, it's I'm not high on it because of the cost requirement, and I know that sounds silly. Okay, no, I was mistaken. I thought it was 1 generic and black. Two black rather. It's still good. Yes, it's instant speed, so we can get this combo out on top of someone else, much the same way we could with a Shallow Grave or a Corpse Dance. And we're going to sideline the Corpse Dance for now. So we have 4 cards to cut, and let's just revisit our combo lines and the best ways to accomplish them. So if we were to Buried Alive, Necrotic Ooze, Phyrexian, Devourer, and Triskelion or Walking Ballista, and I would recommend you bin your Walking Ballista over Triskelion because Triskelion exclusively works with Machias. You go ahead, Buried Alive them, and I think I put Buried Alive in. Then you have the perfect target to reanimate with Necrotic Ooze. You would want to shoot for this early. Maybe Peer into the Abyss goes back in just for its converted mana cost. But obviously you're going to exile all your list and try to win on the spot there. And then obviously the other one, Mike and Shrike, we all know it. Triskelion, again, comes into play with 3+1/+1 counters. We're able to ping itself, ping an opponent, and have it come back because of its Undying. Do you not use Abundance with the Sylvan Library? Do I not use Abundance with the Sylvan Library? I generally don't work towards combos of cards in the 99. Does that make sense? Like, there's no sense in me. I'm not going to work towards anything like this, but we'll look at it. 2 generic double green enchantment. If you would draw a card, you may instead choose a land or non-land. Nah, nope. Done. I lost interest for that. I'm sorry. I feel like at 4 CMC, I have better things to do. I'm just looking at this multi-kicker because, again, we do have excess mana. And another thing I wanted to quickly go over were potential kicker cards. This isn't good for the list, so no. Okay, so let's just go ahead and make those cuts we should make. Hit the like button. That's not me. That's Jose. Thank you. Hit that like button. Smack it. Give it a tap. Or don't. It's okay. So, because of the Phyrexian Devourer line, hell yes, I am definitely banking on having big dumb stacks pieces in the list, despite the fact that they might not even be played, because exiling them is just as good in the instance we need to pop off, right? Defense Grid is a very great means of protection if we're trying to combo off. It's not something you want to lay down early, so potentially Defense Grid can come out for now. It's just a means of protection. Just a means of protection. Just looking over some of the comments here. Click the Patreon link. Yeah. Hell yeah. Do it. Okay, so Tooth and Nail's obviously in the list. Aghadim's Awakening, I think, is great for the list because we can very easily accomplish Aghadim's Awakening, and it gives us a lot of creatures back, and we've got a whole range of creatures to work with here. Eldritch Evolution feels a little weak, not gonna lie. But still, every reliable tutor we can use, we should. Knowing that Belbe is a creature we can always have, what between 4 and under is good? Necrotic Ooze. That's reason enough for Eldritch Evolution. Genesis Wave is feeling a little lackluster. Permanent-wise, we have what? 10, 36, 46, including lands. Genesis Wave isn't really helping us conclude the game. We really need to get lucky. I think we keep it for now. Torment of Hellfire, I'm not feeling anymore. Finale of Devastation, excellent. Diabolic Intent, excellent. Demonic Tutor, excellent. Green Sun Zenith, yes, for the Deathrite Shaman. We don't have a Dryad Arbor, in case you're wondering, in our land base. But so far as green creatures are concerned, Deathrite is hella good. And obviously Fiend Artisan, we can convert that into an actual creature tutor, right? Imperial Seal, Necessary Evil, we've talked about this earlier. Tevesh Svat, what do you all think about Tevesh Svat? Crop rotations in the list. What does a Finale of Devastation hit, I believe is what we're asking. Anything that we put mana into it for. And bearing in mind that Belbe, in a good day, will generate 6 colorless mana, that means we can get any of our combo cards, right? So it's good. It's good. Tevesh could be good. I agree. Tevesh could be bad. Every single time I've seen Tevesh played, it's been good. I had my ass handed to me and limited by Tevesh. Is a pain in the ass. The fact that Tevesh is 4 and 1 black makes it extremely palatable for this list. On top of the fact that both of its great abilities are positives. I mean, plus effects. Sorry, you can't see this. And I'm sure my face is covering up the text here. But if you don't know what Tevesh does, it's from Commander Legends. It seems really good, but it does feel like a flexible spot. Again, it is a big drop for the list. So we probably want to keep it for that alone. I think we might start to shave off lands here in a second to really get this count narrowed. And I'm going to pretend that our lands, that our color split is even. Excuse me. I'm not entirely certain we need Lake of the Dead here. I can't make heads or tails whether I want Lake of the Dead. Thing about Tevesh's compared to the others, you can't tutor it, so it's. I don't think that means it's unreliable. Tevesh's blocker and card draw, yeah. Look, you know what? I made the mistake of thinking that Tevesh's ability only lets you draw 1 card and then 2 cards if you sacked your commander, right? Wrong. Literally, the card draw from this is reason enough for me. Even if it just means that my Imperial Seal is that much better because I can kill the dork to grab the thing I need, it's that much better. On top of grabbing whatever the hell's, whatever the heck else is under that. It's potent as hell. Tevesh's spot, I'm going to leave for now. And let's just see where our card count is. We're at 101. Mind you, our lands are down to 29, but also bear in mind that we're using Agadim's Awakening, so we're at 30 lands. I think that is a good count for this. Yes, the CMC is, the curve is on the higher end with some of these spells, but I don't think we're going to have trouble cheating anything out. I do not believe we can remove any of this removal. I want to leave Caustic Caterpillar as artifact and enchantment removal because it's tutorable. If you're ever wondering why certain card choices are made, just consider whether or not there's a tutor for it in the list. We do need to remove one more thing. I think of all the things, maybe there's too much of redundancy between Retreat to Hagra and Sanctum of Stonefangs, because everything else we have here is kind of valid. Necropotence for value in this list? Well, already neglecting Ad Nauseam and PETA, right? So Necropotence here, it is the harder spell to cast. We just can't use PETA because digging that deep really affects our particular package with Ooze, but it will let us manually assemble, if we're lucky, Triskelion and Machias. I still think that PETA's out. I think that Necropotence stays for the hand sculpting. I do think that we ditch Retreat to Hagra. We are not playing pure with this build. It is not easy to assemble this combo. And we don't have any real discard utilities, right? We don't have something as an additional cost discard a card. So if we happen to pull into both of our combo pieces, our A plus B is 12 mana. And we just spent how much on PETA? It is a 7 CMC card. It's difficult to say whether that's worth it or not. Yes, generally it is. And we do have the fast mana to hopefully wheel into it and make it work, but it's just, I don't foresee that happening. And I'm already trying to build this so that it goes mid to late anyways. And I don't think we have the necessary amount of stacks to really push that, make it really favorable. We do need to cut one more card though, so let's just focus on that. I do think it's between Sanctum of Stonefangs and Retreat to Hagra. I'm liking everything else. I want the redundancy between Animate Dead to Necromancy. I need the Reanimate spell I have. That's 4 ways to reanimate. Entomb and Buried Alive to set up that grave. I do think that there's still an excuse potentially for Ad Nauseam here. It's not like we're trying to turbo into a win off the bat with that. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at these comments. I am going to close this out momentarily, though. We will cut a card and let's test it just a few times to see what we can do. Necropotence and Emergent Zone, yeah. Retreat is 3 CMC and conditional. I agree with you. Green Sun is, generally speaking, in most lists, a method to get a dork out, right, on your turn 1. And I mean by using Green Sun for 0, x equals 0 to grab Dryad Arbor, which is the land forest that essentially you just play a forest and play into Dryad Arbor. So you sort of have your dork out because of it. Green Sun Zenith here actually does have some great valid targets. It gives you a pinger with Deathrite Shaman. It gives you Fiend Artisan to power out combo pieces with the X of its spell, its cost. It also gives you the Manglehorn to stop any sort of artifact storm. It also gives you Eternal Witness. I mean, the list goes on. The point is, within every range of our curve here, we do have a very valid green creature. And even if just plugging 5 CMC into Green Sun Zenith to get Oran Frostfang is your thing for next turn, right? Hell, even on the same turn, who knows where we're going to be at with our mana. We have Dark Ritual as well to make that happen, to fulfill the X cost, right? I like it. I like it. So now we're at 100. We're at 100. We might as well just test this out and see what it looks like. Finale of Devastation is also a reanimation spell. Yes, very valid point. Thank you. Loyal Subordinate. While that is saving, let's go ahead and take a look at Loyal Subordinate. I need some water. Give me 1 second. So we've sidelined 2 creatures that have very similar effects. We can go over them now. We have Loyal Subordinate. So Loyal Subordinate's nice because it appears to do that automatically, right? Yeah, just at the beginning of combat. There's no other requisite. It's a 3/1 body, so you're beating. And you're also doing 3 damage every single time. That's pretty gas. I do agree with you. I think Loyal Subordinate's probably better than Hooded Blightfang. And I also believe, and I'll close in on these, Servant of Timoret. Yes, a Loyal Subordinate is definitely going to be sidelined, if a consideration. But let's go ahead and playtest this. Are we suggesting that we do a tooth and nail into Marilyn the Mornsong and Opposition Agent? Is that what we're trying to suggest? I don't think I would play for that any other way. We are going to mulligan this, and we'll just do so by refreshing the page. Marilyn the Mornsong and Opposition Agent. Opposition Agent's good by itself. Marilyn is not very good. I don't think I would recommend that. I would want to put them on the field at the same time if I were to go for that. If we were looking at our hands, this is not a very good hand either. We're going to mull for a decent starting hand. This is sans any sort of, London Mulligan rule. I just want to see what potential hands look like to know what kind of redundancies we need. And once we find a hand we like, we'll just go ahead and play it out. Okay. Are we asking a lot, Belbe? Are we asking a lot to get a decent starting hand? Well, of course the hand where we get 2 forest. This could have potentially been good. So these hands aren't looking great. Now we've got a lot of redundancy between our effects here. This is playable. Well, this is more than playable. This is pretty gross starting hand. Okay, let's try this. We need more pingers. We might. We can count the amount of pingers, but I think we have somewhere in the region of 8 to 9. And this is considering the Hagra cut, right? Let's try this. Do we turn 1 Belbe? No, we're not doing that. But we'll crack this P Vista. And I didn't really look at what our deck's composition mostly is, but I think that swamps are probably... I mean, just looking at our hand here, we obviously want swamps, and we need a swamp to get the night market look at anyways. I'm not going to concern myself with the life total here. I just want to go ahead and shuffle library. Okay, so that's turn 1. And next turn. So obviously what this is amounting to is the dream turn 1 that we all spoke of, right? When she goes to attack, she becomes tapped. Trigger goes on the stack. Everyone loses life. I gain a life. And then we have 6 CMC to spend. So obviously of the lot, just because of the setup here, we're really not able to do anything with the Buried Alive to get towards our combo. But again, we want to slow the game down. This is clearly going to be a Ward of Bones play. Now this is sort of like a dream hand. And you saw that we navigated through 5 separate hands to get here. And bearing in mind, if we were actually playing a game, we would have to go ahead and bin some of those cards. So not great, not great. But that was just our luck. I think that this establishes that this is doable, but I'm thinking that we can play this out if we want, but I feel like I know what I want to do with this hand. Unfortunately, we're lacking lands and a good means of ramp. Even just here, a dork would have been fine to get us going on the right path with Buried Alive, maybe cutting people off of dropping their own lands. Obviously, again, as we've mentioned, artifacts are generally used as the form of ramp in cEDH, so folks with 2 lands still have enough to drop their Arcane Signet, yada, yada, yada. They're going to be in an okay spot against this particular board. Ward of Bones is still fine, though, for shutting down the amount of artifacts, rather, that they can play, right? So seeing as we only have 1, they need to stop at their Mana Vault, or whatever they have placed on the board. And clearly, if they've assembled a board state with more cards, then you've missed out on Ward of Bones, but let's just pretend that we were on the play, and that was our turn 2. Now let's go ahead and try this again. We'll look at one more hand here. We do have 8 mana. You're right, we do. We do have 8 mana there. A lot of generic. We would definitely go for the Buried Alive, and then we would have a good setup for the win. Am I wrong? Oh, shit. You might have been right. Might have been right. What did that look like? Did we have the win with Buried Alive? Yeah, look at that. Okay, cool. That was a perfect hand. Foolish me. Foolish me. Put it in my hand. Yeah, we would have. We had 2 black, and Buried Alive is 1 black with the Animate spell. Yeah. No shit. Not bad, turn 3. Not bad. Let's see if we can replicate that again. Again, that was very much a miracle hand. We might take out Mirror Pool, by the way. Might take out Mirror Pool and just add in perhaps another rainbow land, or at least a land that taps for 2 mana. Okay, so we're at it again. This hand isn't as good as the previous one. That's okay. Let's go ahead and drop this. Look through this library of ours. We want to get Bayou, but I'll probably just grab the first thing that comes up. Let's look for Bayou. Okay. This is her. Now, unfortunately, this hand doesn't look as good with a setup. So doing this for mana, not that great. In this instance, do we even bother putting Belbe down? It's questionable. Probably not. Yeah, that hand was an Xmas present. There's no Ancient Tomb in this list. There's no Ancient Tomb. What is a Mirror Pool going to copy? Because our combo is A-B with 2 creatures, Mirror Pool in the best case scenario is going to copy something like a Finale of Devastation to give us both solutions at once, right? Maybe there's even an excuse for the Corpse Connoisseur, right? To sort of set up a Necrotic Ooze win, but not over having to use Mirror Pool. I think Mirror Pool was a nice thought off the bat. It's one of those utility lands I wanted to check out. I think we avoid it. The other question is whether we use Turntimber Symbiosis as another land. And the only reason I'm suggesting this is because we are using Phyrexian Devour as part of a combo for Necrotic Ooze. Having a 7 CMC spell to exile is a pretty big deal. Obviously, pinging ourselves for 3 kind of sucks, but again, we're not relying on Ad Nauseam, and we're only using Necropotence for value. So we can probably get away with Turntimber Symbiosis, even if the effect isn't something we're going for. But mind you, I've actually won games with Turntimber Symbiosis. If you don't know what it does, you look at the top 7 cards of your library, and you may put a creature from among them onto the battlefield. So obviously, this is a great way, provided you've done a top deck tutor, to get the combo piece out. And of course, we're fulfilling that 4 generic requirement pretty easy with Belbe. I think what we do is take out the Mirror Pool here and add in the Turntimber Symbiosis. And we'll get rid of Mirror Pool. I love the thought. But we don't need another tapped land, at least not from what I was seeing there. And we might even want to bump the land count up to 31, give Mox Diamond more of a purpose, particularly because we can't run effects like Null Rod and our Collector Oof. We can, but then we would need ways to reliably sacrifice them or remove them, and well, we don't have them. Gravebrigger Lamia is strong, and it is stronger than Corpse Connoisseur. It neither make the cut, usually. We're not trying to go that fast in this list. I don't think that this is a real proactive list. Yes, Leech-Ridden Swamp is the land that pings players. It comes into play tapped. This one I can make an excuse for because you can fetch it as it is a swamp. Now, as the list stands, we have a couple cards on the maybe board. It looks like somewhere in the region of 16 for 12 maybe board cards that we can reliably switch in and out. We don't have really the amount of bombs I was hoping to drop within the realm of colorless spells, specifically artifacts. I do think that Tevesh Svat would be a godsend in some of these hands. Unfortunately, as we've noticed, the turn 2 Belbe with the pinger doesn't let us cast Tevesh Svat, right? Because we do need the land, the black producing land, or like a Lotus Petal or something else, Chrome Mox, to get us there. I do think Cryptolith Fragment is great. It would have been nice to see any one of these, but again, they're 1 of 10. And mind you, not all these cards require Belbe's mana. So obviously things we want to drop are God Pharaoh's Statue, Trinity Sphere, Sphere of Resistance, Ward of Bones. But the count is so low that the practicality of those being dropped is also low. What we do have a lot of tutors for are creatures, so assembling our combo is pretty easy. What I might do is honestly cut some of the redundancy so far as creature tutors are concerned and put in like more back-breaking stacks effects. Because particularly artifact-based ones, just solutions that are generic to cast, because I want to make sure that if I do set up that hand, like we had the Ward of Bones hand, I want to make sure that happens frequently, with consistency. As it stands now, it doesn't look like we're going to do that consistently. So just taking one more look at this. I do like, dropping a Ward of Bones on turn 2 is cool. I do like that. I want that to happen with frequency. If that means putting in colorless planeswalkers, what, Ugin? Ugin, and then we can put in Karn, right? Shut down artifacts only opponents control. That is valid. Mycosynth Lattice, be that player. Then we can do that. Tevesfot still seems good, but he's never going to be turn 2-able, at least not practically speaking. Yes, there are scenarios that can happen where Tevesfot drops on turn 2. He doesn't need to drop on turn 2 to be good. But in my mind, our turn 2 is pivotal. I think if you're going to play Belbe, you want to play for a really great turn 2, and that means dropping hard stacks then, and then slow playing your turn. I think what we saw there and what I so clearly missed was a very easy assembly for a win on our turn 3. I think that it's going to be a rare occurrence, but it obviously can happen, and I missed it. Thank you for all for mentioning that. Yes, and can animate your yeah. Karn and Lattice seems very good as a win con for Belbe. To be honest with you, I in case you don't know what Mycosynth Lattice is, excuse me if that destroyed your ears. So this is another 6-drop, and I mentioned this in a meme-y sort of way, but it is something people do because it's damned good. All permanents are artifacts in addition to their other types. You already know where this is going. All cards that aren't on the battlefield, spells, and permanents are colorless, less relevant in this particular line of play. Players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Well, what sucks is if that Karn is out, and I'm talking about the 4 CMC Karn from War of the Spark, opponents' artifacts can't be activated. So, and the thing is, they're all generic. I think we want to lean more towards generic costed cards to make the most out of Belbe's turns. And this is a real good hard lock. I was just joking, but we might want to go that route. And what I'm going to do to end this video is just add those to the maybe, and then I'll tool with this. What I'm going to do ultimately is assemble this, copy and paste the same list to both my Mox field and my Architect. So if you're on there and don't follow those for all of these future cold brews. I'll be posting all of my main list to Tapped Out. I do like this deck editor. I think it's really solid. So I'm probably going to migrate back to using Tapped Out. Let's just go ahead and drop those in though. We have definitely extended way beyond what I was intending to do. Deck lists always take a long time to construct. This one not excluded. I think it's the Great Creator. Pretty sure it's the Great Creator. Yeah. Okay. There we go. All right, so I'm going to work those into the list, and I'm also going to find more utilities that are generic in cost. Because again, the real dream turn here is to do exactly what I did. Drop that pinger, drop Belbe, and play a massive spell, right? Lattice fixes all your Belbe mana. Yes, it does. It means it's usually not correct to drop a Belbe. Yeah. I don't honestly think doing Belbe on turn 2 unless you have a play makes sense. I agree with that. Because again, it is never smart to give your opponents advantage over you if you're not, taking a slice of that pie first. I wouldn't drop Belbe unless you had a way to play her and reliably do something with the mana you're producing. If you're just lining yourself up with pingers and dorks, that's fine. Go ahead and do that, but don't drop Belbe until you have the hand to play. And what's nice is that because we're in Golgari, we have the Imperial Seal, the Demonic Tutor, the Vampiric Tutor. We have those necessary tutors to actually get the hands we want to drop. So I don't think it's impossible. Again, you do need some pretty magical hands to really pop off the way, we did on that one test play there. But otherwise, I think she's fine. I'm going to keep playing her and testing her. Again, this extension goes out to our Patreon members. If you're available, I'm happy to upload this list onto Cockatrice and play with you all. We can test it out, have some fun with it. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me on this first ever cold brew. We went 3 hours, and you know what? Why not? I had fun doing it. At the end of these videos, as I do with all of my regular videos, I like to thank our Patreon crew, and I think we can go ahead and start that up now. So guys, thank you again for following along. I had a blast doing this. I'd like to thank one of our lucky Patreon members at the end of every one of our videos, and the same is goes for our live streams, and that member is Jeremy Wallace. Jeremy, thank you so much for being a Brew baby. You are among the best. And to close out this video, I'll leave you with the thoughts on the monthly topic from Tornado Joe. I'll be reading for Tornado here. And this is in regards to what got you into Commander and what your first deck was. I hunt choice edible mushrooms here in Northwest Washington, so fungus creatures were a perfect fit when I saw them. My first EDH deck was started at the beginning of last year. I had gone a long time without playing Magic and discovered Arena around December 2018. I ended up putting together a deck using Spore Crown Thallid with other fungus and sapperling producers. Then I saw Slimefoot and made a Golgari deck instead of going mono green. I was going to make a standard deck based on it and use it in my LGS, which was going to be my first time playing in an LGS, but I decided to browse some deck techs and soon discovered EDH and Slimefoot decks. I ended up also discovering tokens and counter doublers. The first thing I bought was a doubling season since it was the most expensive card on my list. All the doubling except Primal Vigor were purchased since I didn't want to share the effect. I ran into an issue with budget once I got down to only needing 20 or 30 cards left to finish the deck, so I decided to buy MTG Go and build it there. I built a few variations and was even able to make it better than my paper list at that time. My paper deck was put on hold as I rapidly started building tribal decks on MTG Go. My deck count soared up to more than 50, with Prosh Food Chain using Singleton lands as my most expensive. December of 2019 is when I started building Slimefoot again, and then building many decks with what I had accumulated from my many booster boxes and Challenger dual decks. I don't even know exactly how many decks I've thrown together now, and it's only been less than a year.